back with a new fanfic. Which is what if half-demon Naruto built the ultimate harem with Sakura, Ino, Hinata, Anko, Ayame, Tsume, Hana, Yugao, Kurenai, Fem. Haku, Fem, Jashin, Fem, Hidan, Fu, Yugito, Tenten, Tayuya, Kin, Karui, Samui, Shion, Koyuki, Mei, Tsunami, Tsunade, Natsuhi, Konan, and Fem. Kyubi, Heart 4, and if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Sunlight filtered through the trees as birds began to greet the morning sun with their songs, exposing a lone individual in a pink kimono kneeling in the center of a meadow clearing in the forest, humming happily to themselves as they picked various plants and put them into a small basket. A sound from the person's right caught their attention, turning to see a young blonde also laying in the field with his eyes closed, breathing softly. Slowly, the individual made their way towards where the prone blonde lay, gasping slightly as they recognized his face as one of the Konoha shinobi. Slowly reaching over, the person contemplated trying to strangle the boy first before shaking that notion away and instead gently shook him awake. "You shouldn't sleep outside," they commented. "You could get severely sick." Naruto only smirked as he sat up from his laying position. "Guess I fell asleep while watching the stars last night," he lied. In truth, after Naruto had left the house, he had wandered the town and nearby surroundings, picking up more information on Gato and his supposed plans from the goons that just couldn't keep their mouths shut. It surprised him when he found out the fat greedy man planned to betray Zabuza and kill him, while taking the swordsman apprentice as his personal slave. "So, what are you doing out here, miss?" he politely inquired. "I was picking healing herbs for a friend that recently got sick." She smiled. "They must mean a lot to you if you go out of your way like this." Naruto commented with a smile. "I owe him everything," she simply replied. "Sorry, where are my manners?" The blonde chuckled. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki." "Haku." The girl giggled. "Need any help picking herbs for your friend?" the blonde offered. Haku thought for a moment. If she declined, he may be suspicious. Though she didn't dismiss the possibility of him sabotaging the herbs to harm Zabuza further. Deciding it would be best to avoid any suspicion on her, she reluctantly accepted the blonde's help. "So, what herbs do you need?" he asked as the blonde Hanyu began rummaging through the grass and flowers. "You said he was sick, does he need herbs for his stomach and fever?" "Well, he kind of got a nasty cut," she replied cryptically, not wanting to give too much away. "Ah, I see," was all Naruto replied with. However, if the girl would have looked closer, she would have seen that Naruto had already been collecting herbs specifically for open wounds. Walking over, he dropped what he had collected so far into the basket next to her. Flicking his fingers slightly, Haku never noticed the black droplets stain her kimono. "So you're a shinobi then, Naruto-san?" Haku inquired, trying to strike up a conversation as they collected the herbs. "I am," he smiled, before turning to her. "But then again, you already knew that, didn't you, Hunter-san?" Haku could only gasp in surprise, before turning to the blonde with a horrified look on her face, preparing herself for the worst. "Oh, how did you know?" she asked, fear evident in her voice. "Do not fear," he gave her a warm smile. "I am not here to fight you or even sabotage Zabuza-san's recovery. If anything, I want him 100% for our next spar. And as to how I know," he smirked, while pointing towards his nose, "I recognized your scent when you saved Zabuza-san from Tada-sensei." Haku was a little taken aback by the blonde's warmness towards her. Though how he spoke of his sensei intrigued her. "Tada-sensei?" she inquired, raising an eyebrow at the nickname given to the blonde's sensei. "Yeah, I call him that because he is lazy, like a sloth," Naruto explained with a grin as he handed the girl some more herbs, allowing her to check them over to make sure they were the correct ones, before dumping them into the basket. "And as you saw in the battle, he heavily favors the Uchiha. Not much of a sensei then." Haku frowned, slowly finding herself more at ease around the Konoha shinobi. "If he isn't teaching you anything, how are you skilled enough to go head on with Zabuza-sama?" "My Heims helped me train back home." He smiled fondly as he thought about his girls back in Konoha. "Not to mention, I had what you may call a divine intervention." The last bit caused the girl to frown in confusion. "What do you mean, divine intervention?" "That's a secret," he merely smiled, causing her to frown more. "However, maybe in the future I will tell you. I believe I have enough herbs for Zabuza's treatment," Haku stated, as she noted the basket was full. "Thank you for your help, Naruto-san." "Not a problem, Haku-san." The blonde smiled once more, causing her to blush slightly. "Give Zabuza-san my regards." Naruto watched as Haku disappeared into the trees, a small smile at his face. He had to admit, she was cute. Furthermore, she was skilled, since she was able to conceal herself from Kakashi when she had retrieved Zabuza. Something he greatly respected in a kunoichi. Closing his eyes, the blonde Hanyu sunk into the shadows, disappearing entirely. Zabuza's hideout. Haku was in a bit of a daze, reliving the past few moments she had spent with the blonde shinobi. Feeling her face heat up as she remembered how cute he looked. Not to mention the compassion he had shown. He had known she was an enemy, yet he still helped her. This was a quality Haku looked for in a person. She had seen that the blonde was strong, and now she had seen that he was also compassionate, even towards a known enemy. She couldn't help but smile about that, before her eyes widened in realization. She had a crush on the blonde shinobi. What's got you in such a good mood? Zabuza's voice broke her out of her thoughts, causing her to jump slightly. Prompting the demon of the mist to mentally chuckle at her antics, even though he remained stoic outside. No, nothing, Zabuza-sama, Haku squeaked out, cursing herself for dropping her guard. I merely had a run-in with one of the Konoha shinobi while I was out. She replied, after composing herself. It was the blonde you fought. You weren't followed, were you? He narrowed his eyes. No, she wasn't followed, but I did mark her. A voice stated from the shadows. The two were quickly on guard as they turned their attention to the dark corner the voice had come from. Only to see the blonde shinobi emerging from the shadows. His cerulean blue eyes glowing in the darkness that shadowed his face, giving them an ominous appearance. Relax, Zabuza-san. The blonde smiled as he fully stepped out of the shadows. As I told Haku-san, I am not here to fight. So you can put the kunai away. After a handful of seconds in silence, Zabuza relented and removed his hand from the kunai he had hidden under the blankets. Seeing that the larger man relaxed, Naruto brought up a chair and sat a comfortable distance away, showing that he truly meant no harm to them. So what do you want, Gaki? Zabuza asked, narrowing his eyes at the blonde. Well, I overheard a bit of information that is of some importance to yourself and Haku-san. The blonde stated. Why didn't you just tell me earlier? Haku asked, a little upset that she had been marked so easily by the boy. You're right, I could have. But I really wanted to see how Zabuza-san was doing. He smiled. Also, I couldn't resist seeing your beautiful face again. This last part caused the girl to blush and the large man to scowl. And what information would that be, Gaki? Oh, just that Gato is planning on betraying you. Naruto simply stated, causing the other two's eyes to widen in shock. I overheard a few of this petty thugs talking about it in town last night. And just how does he plan to do that? Zabuza asked. The fat pig knows even his two bodyguards are no match against Haku, let alone me. I guess the plan is, after you fight my team, regardless who wins, Gato will send his army of thugs in to finish off whoever is left. The blonde informed the swordsman. With everyone tired from the battle, it wouldn't take much for the numbers to overrun us. Their orders are to kill all the men, and take the women alive. From the gossip of the thugs in town, Gato has laid claim to Haku-san. These words caused Zabuza's eyes to narrow in anger. There was not a doubt that the blonde kid before him was telling the truth. It was right up Gato's ally to turn his back on the hired help. Not to mention, the fat man had already threatened Haku in front of him. Information isn't free in our line of work, Gaki. Zabuza stated as he turned his attention back towards the blonde. What's the price? You're right, I will be asking something in return. Naruto stated. I understand it is a big price to ask, but I request that I am the one to end Gato's life. Zabuza could only stare at the blonde in shock. He had expected the kid to ask for money, his sword, or even a kiss from Haku with the way he had flirted with her earlier. But to be the one to deliver the death blow, was not something he expected. I know you want to be the one to do it, but let's just say that someone I respect and care has requested me to end his life. Naruto gave a brief explanation. In return, I will fight you with everything I got in our next spar. How does that sound, Zabuza-san? What do you mean everything you got? Clearly you knew I was holding back in our last fight. The blonde gave a knowing smirk. Even more, the sword isn't my preferred weapon. And what is your preferred weapon? Zabuza asked, clearly intrigued. Now that would be telling, Zabuza-san. Naruto grinned, earning a chuckle from the large swordsman. I like you, Gaki. You got yourself a deal, but you better give me a damn good fight. I suppose I should get back to my team before they begin to wonder where I am. The blonde sighed as he stood up from the chair he was sitting in. Fluidly moving over to where Haku stood, he gently took her hand and kissed her knuckles, causing the girl to blush further. I look forward to seeing you again. This only caused the large man to glare at the blonde once more. Smirking, Naruto melded into the shadows. Shaking his head, Zabuza turned to say something to Haku only to freeze when he saw the love-struck look in her eyes and her face flushed, as she stared at where the blonde boy once stood. I did not sign up for this. He grumbled to himself. With Naruto, having left Zabuza and Haku to contemplate what he had informed them of, Naruto emerged from the shadows just outside the bridge builder's home. Not sensing the lazy Jonin or the emo anywhere near the house. Though he could sense his other teammate upstairs, he knew that he first had to talk with Tsunami to allay her worries of where he was all night, and then Sakura. He could care less about Kakashi or the emo duck. As he entered the home, he could see his newly marked maid in the kitchen. Smiling, he got behind her and snaked his arms around her waist, causing her to sigh in contentment as she leaned back into his embrace. Allowing him to kiss along her neck. I was worried about you last night, Naru-kun. Tsunami whispered, concern evident in her voice. Turning slowly to face her lover and leaned in to give him a deep kiss, breaking it a few seconds later. I'm sorry I made you worry, Su-chan. He smiled. I was merely scouting for more information last night. Did you find anything more? I did, he replied with a grin, thinking back on his talk with the two earlier. Turns out, Gato is planning to betray his hired help. I even managed to track down the two he hired and warned them of the Mont's imminent betrayal. This caused Tsunami to gasp in surprise. Though I do ask that you keep this quiet from Tata-sensei and his emo buddy. This of course prompted the woman to chuckle. I promise, not a word. Speaking of the two, I take it that they are with your father at the bridge. The blonde asked. Tsunami nodded in response. Yes, Kakashi requested that Sakura stay behind. Meaning he is probably focusing on training the Uchiha again. Naruto sighed. I guess I better see if there is anything I can help Sakura-chan with. Alright Naruto-kun. She smiled as she turned back to the dishes she was washing prior. Lunch will be ready in a few hours. Looking forward to your cooking, Tsunami-chan. Giving her one last kiss, the blonde disappeared upstairs and knocked on the door of the room that Sakura was staying in. Hearing a confirmation to enter, he opened the door and greeted the pinkett. Morning, Sakura-chan, he smiled. As he spoke, he could see a mixture of emotions raging through the pinkett's emerald-colored eyes. Everything from worry to anger and even regret. I apologize if I made you worry last night, I just needed to go check up on a few things. He continued. Silence hung in the air between the two as Sakura was debating how she should approach what she had discovered the previous night. With a little encouragement from her inner self, the pinkett took a deep breath before looking at her blonde teammate. Naruto-kun, she began, prompting the boy to shut the door behind him. I am not sure how to say this, so I will be blunt. The Kyuubi is sealed inside you, isn't it? Naruto stood there gaping. He had to be honest, she was rather blunt. How did you come to that conclusion? He asked after he composed himself. Well, after what you told Inari-san about your childhood. She began, guilt-laced in her voice. I began thinking back of what we spoke about when you listed what elemental affinities you have. You said your fire affinity was due to an S-rank secret. With that and what you told Inari-san, and your age, I came to the conclusion that you were born around the time the Kyuubi attacked and that the Yondaime was forced to seal the Kyuubi within you, since you can't kill pure chakra. Not to mention your nickname, the Shadow Fox. Very astute Sakura-chan. Naruto praised the cherry blossom, causing her to visibly blush. Still not familiar with actually being complimented. And you are correct, the Kyuubi is sealed within me. Naruto lifts up his shirt, causing her to blush even more at the sight of his abs, though she does notice the seal on his stomach. This is the seal that keeps the Kyuubi sealed within me. He continues, before letting his shirt drop, much to her disappointment. Have you ever met with him? She asked, a little curious if the Kyuubi and Naruto had the same form of interaction as she and her inner self did. Yes, I first met her after an attack on my 6th birthday that nearly killed me. Naruto replied after a handful of seconds. Wait, her. Sakura blinked in confusion. Yup, the most power of all the tailed beasts is a woman. The blonde chuckled. She saved my life that night and healed my wounds that would have killed anyone else. For that, I am thankful. That doesn't line up with what we were told in the academy. The pinkett frowned. We were told that the Kyuubi was an evil beast that only wanted to destroy, but you're saying she saved your life. Naruto sighs and lowers himself into a squatting position. One thing I have learned while talking with her, is that there are as many sides to a story as there are people involved. Naruto states, picking his words carefully as he didn't want to reveal who his parents were. From what she has told me of the attack, she was comfortable in her previous Jinchuriki when she was violently ripped from her former host and put under a powerful genjutsu. So, the Kyuubi was forced to attack the village then. Yes, the blonde answered, looking down at the floor. Though I do not know by who. It was a lie, as he knew full well who had controlled Ari into attacking the village. However, he lacked the means to fully track down the masked man who was the cause of everything. You now know more about me than almost anyone else, Sakura-chan. Naruto broke the pinkett out of her musing. I will understand if you want to distance yourself. He didn't get a chance to finish as a pink blur crushed him in a hug, which he returned. Naruto-kun, you should know by now that I am not as stupid as most of the villagers. She said, her voice soft as she fought to restrain her tears from falling. I know the difference between a scroll and a kunai. Naruto only smiled at her words. Thankful for her acceptance. Besides, you make it sound like the Kyuubi isn't that bad. She smiled as she stepped away from him, wiping the tears away from her eyes that were threatening to fall. Maybe sometime I can introduce you. He smiled. I think you two would get along great. Sakura nodded in response. So what did you do last night after you left? She asked, deciding to change the subject. I went scouting for more information about Gato and his operations. He replied. From what I found out, Gato plans on killing all of us when we fight Zabuza next time. And what? Gato plans to capture you and any other female as his personal slaves. He finished, a dark look in his eyes. I will not let that happen. Silence hung between the two for a moment, before the pinkett broke the pregnant pause. Kakashi took Sasuke to the bridge. Sakura said, he told me to stay here to watch the house. Meaning he is giving the Uchiha private training. Naruto sighed once more. How is your training going with the scrolls one gave you? I've been working on them. The pink-haired girl smiled as she produced the scrolls he had given her the previous day. I've been studying the more advanced Suiden and Doden techniques. I'm sure you'll get them down in no time. The blonde smiled. Why don't we go down to the shore and spare? I'll leave a few shadow clones to keep watch. Sakura nodded, a little excited to try out the new jutsus she had been reading up on. Grabbing the scrolls, she took off after the blonde Hanyu. Looking forward to a morning of sparing, she watched as Naruto created 4 shadow clones to watch over the house, bidding Tsunami a short farewell. The two made their way to the shoreline a short distance away from the house. This is where the two spared for the next few hours, with Sakura attacking with her Suiden jutsus and defending with her Doden against Naruto's shadow abilities, as well as his Futon and Raiden jutsus. Which was really challenging for the Pinkett, as the blonde's Raiden attacks would tear through her Doden defenses. What had surprised her was how his Futon abilities would redirect some of her Suiden attacks. However, she pushed forward and adapted to his fighting style, opting to use indirect attacks, instead of direct attacks to throw off his wind abilities. It had come to a surprise to the two of them, that despite training and sparring with one another for the past 4 hours, they had still finished before Kakashi and Sasuke returned from the bridge. Fortunately, the lazy Jonin did not inquire about where the blonde had disappeared to last night, and the Hanyu gave no report of what he had learned of Gato's plan. 1 week later, the following week had passed rather uneventful. If anything, it had settled into a pattern. Kakashi would always take Sasuke aside for training, leaving Naruto and Sakura to fend for themselves. By now, the Pinkett didn't even look to the masked Jonin for training. Instead, she sought out her blonde teammate, whom in her eyes had become her unofficial sensei, in a way. As such, they had fallen into a simple routine. While the lazy Jonin was with the Uchiha, Naruto would create a handful of shadow clones to watch over either the bridge builder and bridge, or Tsunami in the house, depending where they were at the time, before the Cherry Blossom and Hanyu would find themselves a secluded section along the shoreline to train further. Also, while they were with Tazuna at the bridge, Naruto would create a couple dozen shadow clones to aid in the construction, since one of the skills he picked up during his academy years was masonry. Due to these training sessions with the blonde, Sakura's skill in her elemental jutsus had increased rapidly, to the point that she could effortlessly perform some of the B-rank jutsus that were in the scrolls she had been given. On top of her elemental training, she had followed Naruto's advice and kept having a few shadow clones of her own continue with tree and water walking to further increase her chakra control and expand her own reserves even further. During this time, the blonde Hanyu had divided his attention between helping Sakura train, watching over the bridge builder and his family, spending time Tsunami, and finally splitting his free time between working on the next book for his series and researching the seal that kept Ari contained within him. He knew that at his current level in Fuinjutsu, he couldn't hope to fully free her. Though he was working on a theory to allow her to take control of one of his shadow clones and have some form of freedom. This of course caused never-ending excitement in the Kitsune girl, as she made various plans of what she could do out in the physical world. All of them including glomping, groping, and pouncing all over her blonde host. Naruto himself was fairly close to getting comfortable to test out the theory. He had checked, double-checked, and even triple-checked his notes and cross-referenced them with the books he had brought with him. Not wanting to take any chance, as both of their lives are on the line if something were to go wrong. I know you are eager to try this Ari-chan, but I think it would be best if we wait until we are back in the village. Naruto mentally spoke to the Kitsune girl. That way we can have Anko-chan, Yugao-chan, and even Hinata-chan not only watch to make sure everything works, but so you can meet them as well. I understand, Naruto-kun. Ari replied. At least I should be in my human form when we attempt this. And if my calculations are correct, after I make the modifications to the seal, you should be able to spawn a shadow clone at any time you want. The blonde stated. Though for our safety, let's only use it in private or if I am severe danger and need the help. Ari mentally agreed. The last thing they needed was to cause a panic in the village that she could get out of the seal. Even if she would still be tethered to her host. Still, knowing the villagers they wouldn't understand that and lash out in fear and anger. Worst yet, there would be very little Hiruzen would be able to do. Still, being able to spend time with the blonde outside of the seal was worth the precautions. It was now nearing the end of the week. By the blonde's estimates, Zabuza should be fully healed and making his moves soon. However, there was an unsettling feeling in his stomach. He knew that something bad was going to happen. But to who and where? It didn't help that Kakashi had already instructed that all of them would be guarding the bridge tomorrow, thus leaving the house and Tsunami and Inari vulnerable. Naruto didn't like that at all, and was thinking of a way to hang back a little to watch over them. Partially because it was the logical thing to do, and mostly because he was very protective over his mates. It would seem like the thing that the fat bastard would do. While everyone was out, kidnap Tsunami or even Inari to give him an advantage over them in the form of a hostage. Not to mention, Naruto already knew what the sleazy bastard had planned for the girls. The mere thought of it just made his blood boil. He was so going to enjoy killing Gato. After much deliberation, Naruto had concocted a plan that he would disappear once again tonight, so he could stay behind and ensure the house was secure before joining the others on the bridge. He had enough faith in Kakashi's abilities to keep things under control until he got there. Not to mention, Sakura had grown by leaps and bounds during their training sessions. With his mind made up, he quietly informed Tsunami and even Sakura of his plan. Both women saw the logic in it, and the Pinkett even ensured him that she would watch over the bridge builder while they were on the bridge. The next day, just as he had planned, Naruto had disappeared the night prior. Much to the frustration of Kakashi, as the Jonin had intended for all of his team to be at the bridge, as the silver-haired shinobi expected Zabuza and the false hunter Nin to show up today, based off a hunch he had. Still, with Naruto not around, he was forced to just take the others to the bridge with him, asking Tsunami that when she sees him, to send him to the bridge immediately. Shortly after Kakashi and the rest of Team 7 left, Naruto emerged from the shadows. Once again wrapping his arms around the brunette woman. "I'll stick around for a few hours," he told her. "If nothing happens by then, I am going to have you and Inari hide within my shadow space, to keep you both safe." "Do you really think that Gato will target the house?" Tsunami asked, concerned. "He hasn't bothered us before. I would be surprised if he doesn't," Naruto remarked. "With the bridge nearing its completion, your father is a big threat to Gato's operation. If he can't get rid of your father, he will target the family instead." However, he gently took hold of her chin to have her look him in the eyes. Kissing her tenderly, "I will not let that happen," he vowed. Tsunami smiled and kissed him once more, breaking apart just as Inari ran into the kitchen, oblivious to his mother's romantic actions towards the blonde. "Ka-chan, Naruto ni," the boy exclaimed, clearly shaken up about something. "There are two strange men coming towards the house with swords. Inari-kun, I want you to hide in the basement," his mother instructed him, earning a nod from Naruto. "Do not come out until I tell you to, understand?" Inari shook his head in fear, not only from the men approaching the house, but of the rare tone his mother had used that promised him something bad should he disobey this order for any reason. Quickly he ran to the basement door and shut it behind him, hearing the door lock. In a word, the boy was frightened. For him, for his mother, and for his family. However, the mere prescience of Naruto had helped to allay many of his fears. "Shall we?" Naruto asked with a smirk. He had a feeling that the woman had a plan, if she wasn't hiding with her son. "I can't wait to show them my surprise," she stated, almost as if to confirm the blonde's suspicions. Naruto had sunk into the shadows, as Tsunami exited the door to greet the two dishonored samurai that usually acted as bodyguards for Gato. The two didn't know what to make of the situation, as something felt off about the woman before them. She clearly knew they had come for her, so why did she come out into the open? Shaking off those thoughts, the taller one smirked as the woman approached him. "Kami must be smiling upon us if he is making our target so easy to capture," Waraji stated with a smug grin, earning a chuckle from his partner. "Now, why don't you come with us all nice and quiet like, and maybe we won't kill your son?" Tsunami merely smiled, eerily, as she continued to approach the larger of the two. Meanwhile, Zori had moved past them and prepared to entire the house to search for the boy. This prompted Tsunami to turn and scowl at the smaller of the two, only for Waraji to grab hold of her and hold her tight against him so she couldn't escape. Her back to his chest. However, instead of shock or fear, she merely chuckled as a sadistic glint appeared in her eyes, throwing the larger man off guard. Unknown to him, he had positioned her right where she wanted to be. Before he could react, her hand snapped to his katana sword on his left side. Quickly drawing it out, she plunged the blade into her own abdomen, allowing the blade to pass right through her and into the man behind her. Zori had turned to see his partner spitting up blood as the woman had impaled herself to injure the larger man. Though, before he could move, a shadow-like blade shot up from the ground beneath him, cutting him directly in half. The last thing the bluish-white-haired man saw was a blonde rising up from the shadows in front of him. Just before his vision split in two, as both halves of his body separated, leaving a bloody mess in front of the door. Naruto then turned back towards where Tsunami was. After impaling herself, and the man behind her, Tsunami pulled the sword out of her body, allowing her own blood to splatter onto the ground, tossing the sword to the side. A sadistic grin spread across her face as she reached under her blouse and produced a ritualistic stake. Giving the man a quick slash to acquire his blood onto the stake, the brunette then proceeded to draw Jashin's symbol on the ground with her own blood, much to the horror of Waraji. Licking the blood off the tip of the stake, her body began to transform. Her skin turning black, with white, bone-like designs spreading across her body, making it appear like a skeleton had been painted over her body. Her eyes turning blood red, as she gazed at her victim before her. "You are vile and corrupt," Tsunami stated with venom. "For your sins, your soul shall be sacrificed to Jashin-sama." Waraji's eyes widened as he heard the goddess's name, though he had no time to react as the woman drove the stake into her own leg, causing him to collapse as the wound appeared on his own body. She then repeated the same process to her other leg, effectively crippling the shamed samurai from escaping. Slowly, she drew cuts all over her body. watching as they appeared on his. Each time, the mon's cries erupted from his throat. This process continued for almost 10 minutes before she drove the stake through her own chest, killing the man and finishing the ritual. Delivering the mon's soul to Jashin. As the man died, Tsunami's body returned to its normal appearance. All of the wounds she had inflicted on herself healing themselves instantly. Turning, she smiled to her blonde mate who had a look of awe as this was the first time Naruto had witnessed a Jashinist sacrifice someone. Though he was aware of the practice. Normally I like to drag out their suffering longer. She sheepishly admitted, but, I don't want to risk Hinari-kun knowing just yet. It was still a breathtaking sight to see. Naruto commented with a smile as he approached the woman. Why don't you get cleaned up? I need to get to the bridge. Tsunami nodded, then kissing the blonde goodbye, watching as he took off towards where her father and the rest of Team 7 were. Battle of the Bridge. Sakura shivered as she heard the sounds of screams in the distance. These were the screams of someone in severe pain, however her gut instinct told her that it wasn't Naruto. That the blonde had been correct and someone had attempted to attack the house. Once again, showing her that he had far better leadership qualities than her supposed sensei who had wanted to leave the house undefended. Glad we followed Naruto-kun's idea. Inner spoke up, though also keeping her own senses aware to pick up anything her outer self may have missed. Yeah, what the hell was Tada-sensei thinking, leaving the family unprotected? Sakura mentally replied as she watched the two battles in front of her. Kakashi seemed to be holding his own against the large swordsman, though it was becoming evident that the masked Jonin's previous tricks were not working on Zabuza this time. This of course caused Sakura to worry. If Kakashi was killed, she highly doubted she could hold off the swordsman for very long. She only hoped that Naruto got here soon. Turning her attention to the second battle, she watched as her former crush did a very good imitation of a pincushion as dozens of senbons were sticking out of his body. She wanted to feel sorry for him, but the Uchiha's own arrogance had landed him in his current predicament. In one of the masked Jonin's better moments, he had instructed Sakura to back Sasuke up against the masked shinobi. Only for the raven-haired emo to state he didn't need any help from a pathetic loser. Kakashi merely relented, instructing the cherry blossom to protect the client. So here she was, watching the Uchiha elite get an extreme acupuncture treatment. Suddenly, she felt a pull and before she could react, pain shot through her body as she found herself in the ice dome that the masked shinobi had made, whilst Sasuke was where she once was, to the shock of Tazuna. Her vision slowly fading as coldness flooded her body. Sakura-chan, an enraged Naruto shouted. Naruto was livid, he couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. One moment, Sasuke was in the ice dome while Sakura protected the client, the next both had switched places. Now Sakura was lying prone inside the dome of ice mirrors, with countless senbons sticking out of her body. Meanwhile, he could see the smug look on the last Uchiha's face. A swirl of black and dark red energy surrounded his body as his canines become more elongated. His fingernails turning more claw-like, as they lengthened. Meanwhile, the whisker marks that defined his cheeks became more prominent, while his eyes became yellow and his pupils became slits. His coat bellowing from the gusts of wind his power was generating around his body. The enraged Hanyu wasted no time, as he jumped into the shadow below him, and came out from Tazuna's shadow, his fist cocked back. Landing a crushing blow onto the raven-haired emo's head, causing the boy's head to bounce off the concrete, knocking him completely unconscious. Still, it wasn't enough for Naruto. He wanted the Uchiha to scream in agony and bleed. He wanted to slake the ground wet with the emo's blood. Naruto-kun, you need to calm down. Ari shouted from the back of his mind. As much as she wanted to see the arrogant prick get what he deserved, she knew it would only cause her host more problems than it was worth right now. Leave a shadow clone or something and go check on Sakura-chan. Naruto debated this for a handful of seconds before allowing his shadow to detach and form into Hisa-da-Kukura-en, dark clone, before dissipating into a black mist and reforming where Sakura was currently laying down. Haku was kneeling beside her, the hunter nin mask discarded off to the side as she slowly worked to remove the senbons in the girl's body. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, Haku cried, looking up at the blonde who had managed to rein in his fury, taking on his normal appearance once more. Around them, the ice dome she had made fell to pieces. I didn't mean Fora. I was aiming Fora. How is she, Haku-chan? He asked softly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder to show that he did not blame her for what had happened. Taking in a few deep breaths, the ice user responded. Minor puncture injuries. I intended to use the same tactic as I did on Zabuza-sama. Nodding, Naruto removed his jacket and rolled it up, gently placing it under the pinket's head to offer her more comfort. Haku could only blush at the sight of the blonde's exposed muscles. Brushing some pink strands out of the prone girl's face, Naruto stood up to his full height and cast his gaze over to the remaining battle between Kakashi and Zabuza. Do you know any Iryo ninjutsu? The blonde asked, earning a nod from the ice user. Please heal her as much as you can. Naruto then performed a seal, and had 4 more shadow clones poof into existence. Watch over them, no one is allowed to get close. Got it boss, the 4 said in unison. Naruto-kun, what are you going to do? Haku asked, a little concerned. I promised Zabuza-san a good fight, and I never break a promise. He smiled. But first, manipulating his dark energy into a small blade, he held it to Haku's neck. Do you surrender? I surrender, she smiled, understanding what he was doing. Nodding, Naruto withdrew the blade and allowed it to dissipate into the wind. Slowly turning and making his way towards the battle between Kakashi and Zabuza. With Kakashi, the lazy Jonin was not having a good day. Not at all. First, Naruto had disappeared the night before and had yet to return, which had forced him to take the remainder of Team 7 to the bridge in preparation for when Zabuza would show up. How did he know the swordsman would arrive on this day? A man claiming to have overheard Gato's thugs talking, had alerted the masked Jonin that everything would happen today. Not one to take any chances, he had planned to have his entire team here on the bridge. He knew there was a risk of leaving the bridge builder's family unguarded, but had calculated it as a small chance that anything would happen. With the information he had from the client, Gato hadn't bothered them at their home, and it appeared that the man didn't even know where they resided at. A few hours after they had arrived at the bridge, Zabuza had made his appearance, along with the fake hunter Nin that had saved the swordsman during their previous engagement. It wasn't missed by Kakashi that the masked individual seemed to be a bit disappointed, judging by their body language, after they had looked around at those present on the bridge. Quickly, he had instructed Sasuke and Sakura to handle the masked shinobi, though the Uchiha had stated he didn't need any help. Especially from a weak and talentless loser. So instead, he had Sakura watch over the client whilst Sasuke would handle the masked individual. At first, it appeared that the two were on even footing in terms of speed and strength. However, that had quickly went south as soon as the masked shinobi summoned their ice mirror dome. Through the reflections in the ice panels, the masked individual could move at insane speeds. Even worse for the Uchiha was that the ice repelled his fire jutsus, making it so that the boy couldn't melt them. Kakashi had seen this while he battled the Zabuza. He knew he had to finish the swordsman quickly so he could aid his student. Still, the swordsman was not making it easy on him. None of the tricks and mind games he had used last time was working on the missing Nin. When Zabuza had used his hidden mist jutsu, Kakashi had summoned a pack of dogs and had attempted to corner the swordsman and hopefully restrain him long enough to kill or at least incapacitate him. That had not worked as planned. Zabuza had cut down the dogs as they attempted to corner him in the mist. To make matters worse, Kakashi was running out of chakra from using his lone Sharingan too much. His body was also on the verge of giving out, due to blocking, evading, and countering the large swordsman. Various cuts could be seen on his body, all in non-vital areas, to show for his efforts in attempting to defeat Zabuza. Where the hell is Naruto? Kakashi angrily thought to himself. You know copycat Kakashi, Zabuza smirked. That blonde Gaki gave me a better fight than you have so far. The silver-haired Jonin only frowned at that. Taking a chance to look how Sasuke was doing, he saw something that had made his blood run cold. Sakura was now lying in the center of where the masked shinobi's dome was. Turning his gaze to where the girl once was, he saw Naruto deliver a skull-crushing blow to the Uchiha's head, knocking the boy unconscious. Oh, he is pissed. Zabuza laughed, causing Kakashi to scowl. And I have a good idea as to why the Gaki is pissed off. Unlike the lazy Jonin in front of him, Zabuza had seen the switch the Uchiha had made, and it absolutely disgusted the man. Sure, he had killed for money before, but he had never betrayed an ally like that. It was dishonorable and cowardly. The two men watched as Naruto made his way over. Zabuza was getting excited, as he was about to get the best fight of his life. Whilst Kakashi was glaring at the boy, for not being around when he should have been, and for attacking Sasuke. Where the hell have you been, Naruto? He asked heatedly. I stayed behind to watch over the house. The blonde shrugged. I gave you explicit orders that we were all to be here at the bridge. The Jonin seethed, angry that the blonde genin had disobeyed the orders he had given. I recognize that you gave an order. Naruto started with a grin. But given as it was a stupid order, I had elected to ignore it. And you're welcome for that, because shortly after you left Gato's bitch boys showed up to kidnap, possible rape, and murder Tsunami-chan. This bit of information had caused Zabuza to scowl, and Kakashi to frown. Anyways, Zabuza-san. The blonde then turned to the larger swordsman. I hope you are not too tired. I did promise you an all-out fight after all. That you did, Gaki, the swordsman stated as he readied his blade. Don't hold back this time. Kakashi only narrowed his eyes at the interaction between the two. It was far too friendly for the masked Jonin's liking. Naruto, what are you thinking? The silver-haired man stated as he struggled to stand fully once more. You can't take on Zabuza alone. Your confidence in me is so aspiring, Tada-sensei. The blonde remarked, earning a chuckle from the swordsman. Now then, Zabuza-san, shall we? Naruto snapped his hand forward in a flicking motion, summoning his double-bladed shadow scythe in his hand. Both men were shocked at the weapon. It was uncommon for one to use a scythe as a weapon, as they were extremely difficult to master compared to other weapons. Gripping the weapon with both hands, the blonde smirked. Ready, bring it, Gaki. Without warning, the two kicked off the ground towards each other. It was clear to the Kiri swordsman that this fight was going to be vastly different from his prior engagement with the blonde. As Zabuza brought his large blade down with a diagonal overhead strike, Naruto swung his scythe from below to meet the large blade. The two weapons clashed together with a loud clang. While the two weapons were locked together, Naruto pulled his scythe down with the massive blade hooked between the two blades of his weapon, prompting the larger man to lose his balance for a split second. But it was enough time for the blonde to spin and deliver a strong strike from the end of the scythe into the larger man's chest. Quickly resetting his position, Naruto awaited the next exchange of blows. Smirking at the thrill of the fight. While he had trained with Jashin, Yugao, and Anko, there was a difference when your opponent was actually trying to kill you. Though he couldn't help but wonder if Anko was trying to kill him sometimes during their spars. Kakashi could only watch on in pure shock as the blonde Hanyu continued to trade blows with the large swordsman. Unlike the two's prior engagement whereas Naruto was parrying and avoiding the strikes, the blonde was fully blocking the powerful blows delivered by Zabuza with little effort. This only served to annoy the masked Jonin further. There was no way the dead last of the academy is this strong. Meanwhile, back with Naruto and Zabuza, the two had continued to trade blows with one another. The swordsman from Kiri was pleasantly surprised with how well the blonde could use the scythe. So much so, that he was having a hard time defending against him as the young blonde would twirl the weapon with ease, making it hard to distinguish where he would be attacking from. As a result, numerous cuts marred the larger man's body. This is great, Gaki. The larger man grinned madly as he took another swing at the blonde before him. I haven't had this much fun in a fight in years. Naruto only grinned back as he blocked the attacking and countered with his own, striking the man's chest 3 times with a flurry of kicks. The force of the blows nearly knocking the wind out of the larger swordsman. Realizing that a full frontal assault on the blonde was not working, as the teen was far stronger than he looked, not to mention the black scythe he wielded absorbed each strike, removing any vibration that would travel down the handle, making it so the blonde never lost his grip. Zabuza began to go through some hand seals, blanketing the area in a thick mist. While a good tactic on most, this doesn't work on me. Naruto thought with a smirk as he activated his shadow sight. As he did so, he could see the true form of Zabuza standing still in a different location than where he was when he had activated the jutsu. All throughout the mist though, the blonde could see the ghostly forms of the water clones that the swordsman had made. Smirking, Naruto made an equal number of shadow clones before sinking into the shadows that the mist had created, leaving the clones to battle amongst themselves. Now, to find where the Gaki is at, and finish this. Zabuza thought to himself as he expanded his chakra into the mist. Getting sonar-like readings of where everything was. Through this chakra-like sonar, the swordsman could detect what was animate and what was inanimate. It wouldn't do well if he mistook a support beam for an enemy. So the Gaki created shadow clones, smart. Whilst Zabuza attempted to locate where Naruto had disappeared to, which was increasingly difficult as the teen's shadow clones were just as strong as his own water clones, which prevented him from thinning their numbers as easily as he had hoped. What he had failed to realize is the pool of shadows growing larger behind him. Not until he felt the edge of the scythe's blade on his neck drawing a small line of blood from the weapon's razor-sharp edge, causing him to widen his eyes in shock. I win, Zabuza-san. Naruto spoke from behind him. Zabuza could only chuckle in response. He had been bested by a mere genin, though a strong one nonetheless. So you have Gaki, so you have. The larger man stated as he dispelled the mist jutsu, as well as his water clones. Naruto had done the same with his shadow clones that were fighting the water clones, as well as deactivating his shadow sight. Though he still kept the 4 he up that were looking after Sakura and Haku. That was one hell of a fight, Gaki. Zabuza stated with pride as he looked down at the young blonde. So, are you going to tell him that you were still holding back? Ari asked with an amused giggle. Why ruin his good mood? Naruto mentally asked. Besides, it's best if he thinks I went all out. Even better if Tada-sensei believes it as well. However, he was broken out of his musing when the sound of a slow clap echoed across the bridge. Turning to the entryway of the bridge, Naruto could make out a short pudgy man with gray hair surrounded by a small army of thugs and mercenaries. Well, it seems that the great demon of the mist is all talk. The man grinned. To be beaten by a child. Truly pathetic. What are you doing here, Gato? Zabuza asked, even though he already knew the answer. This was merely for show. And why did you bring all of them? Well, you see, Gato grinned. There has been a change of plans. This is where you die today, baby of the mist. This earned a round of laughter from the group behind the man. None of them noticing the knowing smirk that hid under Zabuza's bandages. Kill the men, the pudgy man ordered. Take the women to my chambers, so I can sample the goods after this is over. With their orders received, the large group of thugs charged towards where Naruto, Zabuza, and Kakashi were. The latter not being in any condition to fight as he had already spent almost all of his chakra from using his Sharingan too much in the fight against Zabuza. I got these, Gaki. Zabuza stated, looking to the blonde. Go take the head off of that smug asshole. Hefting his massive blade up, the Kiri swordsman charged at the attacking group. A dark glint in his eyes that promised untold pain and death. Meanwhile, Naruto had summoned his scythe weapon once more into his hands before dropping down into his own shadow, much to the shock of Kakashi, as the masked Jonin had never seen him use this technique before. With Sakura and Haku, during this time, the short fat man was stalking towards where Sakura and Haku were at. A lecherous smirk on his face as he eyed the two females. Seeing the man approach, two of the shadow clones that Naruto had left moved to block him, prompting the man to stop. He wasn't stupid, he knew he couldn't defeat a shinobi outright. He would merely wait until his men dispatched them for him. In the meantime, he would enjoy how they squirmed under his gaze. By this time, Sakura had regained consciousness and was surprised when she found her head laying on a soft material, instead of the hard concrete. Even more surprising was that the enemy who Sasuke was fighting was watching over her, a look of genuine concern in the ice user's eyes. As she looked around, she saw the 4 shadow clones that Naruto had left, a small smile coming to her face. Glad that he had arrived in time. Easy there, your body is going to be a little stiff. Haku informed the Pinkett, as she noticed her starting to move. You, Sakura whispered, her voice a little weak from being impaled in the neck from the senbons. My name is Haku, the dark-haired girl introduced herself, with a look of regret in her eyes. And I apologize that this had happened. It was not my intent to harm you. I know, she replied, it was that bastard Uchiha that switched with me. Don't worry about him. The ice user gave a soft smile. Naruto-kun knocked him out. It looked as if he wanted to do more, but you were his main concern. This brought a small smile to the Pinkett's face. It was then that the two girls noticed the pudgy man leering at them. Haku knew the look all too well from her time traveling with Zabuza. It was a look that held untold perversion. Unconsciously, both girls had scooted back a little as 2 of the clones that Naruto had left moved to block the mon's approach. Suddenly a shadowy figure erupted from the ground in front of the girls, not giving the pudgy man any time to react as he leapt over him. Bringing his weapon upwards as he did so, successfully cutting through Gato's body vertically. Landing behind him, Naruto wasted no time as he twirled his scythe around and performed a backhanded slash. Effectively cutting the mon's head off before it and the rest of his body split in half from his previous cut. Your soul now belongs to Jashin-chan. Naruto thought to himself as he grinned darkly at the sight of the dead scum in front of him. You two all right? He asked, allowing his weapon to dissipate once more, seeing as Zabuza had already made a mess of the force that Gato had brought with him. Both girls blushing at the sight of his exposed muscles, since Sakura's head was laying on his jacket. As they were about to answer, a shadow loomed over the trio. Looking up, they saw a bloody Zabuza who looked a little out of breath after slaughtering nearly 300 of Gato's goons. Fearing for her father figure's health, Haku quickly ran to his side to attend to any wounds he may have. Relax Haku, I am fine. The swordsman sighed, this is all their blood. Gesturing at the massacre of bodies that now littered the bridge. Naruto, I have a request I would like to ask of you. The man stated, earning a curious look from both Naruto and Haku since he never used his name. What would that be, Zabuza-san? The large man looked to Haku for a moment before letting out a soft sigh. I want you to take Haku with you, he finally said, catching everyone by surprise. Be you but Zabuza-sama. Haku cried in shock, only for the man to hold up his hand and ruffle her hair. This is not the life for you, Zabuza stated, though it was clear in his voice that he was trying his best not to allow his own emotions to come forward. I want you to have a stable ground under you, not worrying about if you will be captured by hunter nins. What will you do, Zabuza-san? Naruto asked. I will head back to Kurigakure and help with the rebellion. The swordsman said, you showed me something Gaki. You showed me how much stronger you were when you were fighting for something other than money and yourself. I figured I may as well fight to retake my home once more. I humbly accept your request, if this is what Haku-chan wants as well. The blonde replied, looking to the ice user for an answer. I accept, she replied after a handful of seconds had passed. She knew that Zabuza wouldn't have requested this of the blonde without a good reason. As much as the man tried to hide his feelings, she knew that he thought of her as his own daughter. Very well Haku-chan, when we return to the village, I will talk Gigi into making you an official Konoha kunoichi. Naruto smiled to her, causing her to blush once more. However, I am concerned about the trip back. No doubt the Uchiha will want revenge for you humiliating him. Furthermore, I am certain Tada-sensei will turn a blind eye long enough to allow the duck to at least feel vindicated. This caused the other 3 to scowl at the thought. Sakura, having just been a victim to the Uchiha's ego, knew without a doubt that he would try something. Even further, with the favoritism that their sensei had shown towards the last Uchiha, she had to agree with Naruto on his assessment. However, under Shinobi International law, if an enemy were to surrender to another, that person would be responsible for their care. Overriding even rank, Naruto stated, causing each of their eyes to widen. And since Haku-chan surrendered to me, she is now my prisoner. Not even Hitaki can override it unless he wants to cause an incident with the fire daimyo. Very clever Gaki, very clever indeed. However, for the time being, I think it would be best if Haku-chan stayed with you until we leave. The blonde continued, earning a nod from the larger man. With that, the two departed to rest after the battle, and to pack what belongings had so that she would be ready when it was time to depart with Naruto to Konoha. As the two left, Naruto turned his attention towards the Pinkett. Haku had done a great job healing her wounds, the cherry blossom was still sore and stiff. However, despite this, she was tired of laying on the ground and moved to attempt to stand, struggling slightly until she made it to her feet with the help of her blonde teammate. Immediately enveloping him in a hug, as she lightly sobbed into his shoulder, while the blonde Hanyu whispered soothing comfort into her ears. It was then that Kakashi had finally managed to make his way to the two. All the while glaring at Naruto for what he had done to the Uchiha boy. Uzumaki Naruto, Kakashi seethed. Why did you attack Sasuke? You mean that sack of shit that used a kawarimi on Sakura-chan? The blonde shot back, prompting the silver-haired Jonin to narrow his eyes slightly. Clearly it was an accident then. He defended the Uchiha's actions, earning a scowl from both Naruto and Sakura. That still does not dismiss the fact that you attacked a teammate. You can be sure that I will be reporting this incident to the Hokage. Bullshit, Hatake. You know damn well you need to purposely intend to use a kawarimi on a living being. I know, I've done it twice to Sakura-chan to protect her. The blonde shot back, not the least bit intimidated by the Jonin in front of him. And go ahead and report this to the Hokage. I am more than willing to have Inochi-san view my memories. Me too, came Sakura's hoarse voice from behind the blonde, signifying that she would also submit her own memories to prove Naruto's actions were validated. Kakashi simply frowned at this. He had noticed over the past couple of weeks that the pink-haired girl had ceased pestering Sasuke for dates and had begun to hang around the young blonde more. However, if he was honest with himself, he only had himself to blame as he had constantly taken the raven-haired boy for private training and left the other two to their own machinations. Still, there was one other standing issue. Also, why did you allow Zabuza and his partner to leave? Simple, Naruto shrugged as he bent down to and picked up his jacket and slipped it on. Since Gato betrayed them, their contract to kill Tazuna-san had ended. Not to mention, Zabuza-san just saved everyone else here, since Gato's men's orders were to kill us and take the women. I don't think I need to explain to what Gato had planned for the women. Not wanting to talk with Kakashi anymore, the blonde made a simple hand seal and summoned a couple dozen shadow clones. Alright guys, I want you all to clean up the bridge and help repair any damage that was done to it. Right boss, they said in unison and went off to perform their tasks. Come on Sakura-chan, let's get you to Tsunami-chan so you can get some much needed rest. Naruto stated as he wrapped his arms around the pink-haired girl, whom did the same to the blonde as she knew what he was about to do. I trust you can look after the duck, Tada-sensei. Not giving the masked Jonin time to respond, both Naruto and Sakura sunk into the shadows, leaving behind a shocked and bewildered Kakashi. 1 week later, it had been a long week for Kakashi. As soon as Sasuke had regained consciousness, he had demanded that both Naruto and the enemy ice user should be severely punished for daring to lay a hand on him. It didn't help his case any when confronted about using the kawarimi on Sakura. He claimed that she should feel honored that he finally had a use for her. Tsunami had been severely tempted to throw the young boy out of her house for such a statement, however Naruto had talked her out of it, though she did make it clear that it would be reported to the Hokage. Usually such a threat wouldn't be taken very seriously, except with the disposal of Gato, whom had run out the previous wave daimyo. The villagers had elected Tsunami herself as the new wave daimyo. Such a title would have a lot of weight attached to it when such a report was given to the Hokage. Kakashi knew that the odds were stacked against him and the last Uchiha, so he did his best to play the peacemaker. It didn't help matters further when only a few days ago, Zabuza and Haku had made a visit to the house to talk with the family. This of course had sent the silver-haired Jonin on edge, half expecting that the two had come to attack them. However, Zabuza had sat down with them at the table and explained what was going on. How Haku was going to return to the village with them for a more stable life. He had also stressed that due to international shinobi laws of warfare, that Haku was under the sole care of Naruto, since he was the one that she had surrendered to. Furthermore, that any violation of conduct would be brought before the fire daimyo himself. Almost immediately, the Uchiha had demanded that the girl be placed under his custody, instead of the losers. This of course did not go over well with those in the room. Both Zabuza and Naruto had flooded the room with a massive amount of killer intent, that even had Kakashi gasping for air. Sasuke on the other hand had immediately passed out. Since then, the ice user had stayed with them, mostly around Naruto, Sakura, and the bridge builder's family. Sakura on the other hand, had mostly kept to herself during their downtime, only hanging out with Naruto and Tsunami, and then Haku when the ice user had arrived. Most times, the silver-haired Jonin would see her reading a popular book that he had saw nearly every woman reading in the village. If it wasn't the book, it was scrolls that he had never seen before, making him wonder where she had gotten them from. However, what made him frown was how she acted around the Uchiha now. It was clear that the Pinkett didn't trust the boy anymore. Even more so is that she had flat out said she didn't feel safe around Sasuke or even Kakashi. The only one she truly felt safe around was Naruto. Speaking of the blonde, he had been the most busy of the group, making an army of shadow clones to aid in the construction of the bridge to finish it. Scouting the perimeters of the village to make sure none of Gato's lackeys had escaped. Even finding where the greedy man had resided and raided the home's contents. Not only returning the money that was siphoned out of the country, but also freeing countless slaves he had held in the basement of the complex. Thus, propelling his status even further amongst the villagers, much to a certain Uchiha's ire. At one point in the week, Tsunami had requested him to accompany her to the water daimyo's mansion. Kakashi of course had offered his and Sasuke's services, but they were vehemently shot down as the woman had no respect for the two of them. It wasn't until late the next afternoon that the two had finally returned. It wasn't missed by Tazuna that his daughter kept blushing whenever she looked at the young blonde. Not to mention she had a certain glow about her that entire day. With the week finally over, the bridge finished. It was now time to depart and return to the village. So, they had gathered at the end of the now finished bridge with the entire village bidding their farewells, mostly to Naruto and Sakura, with a few well wishes to Haku. It seemed that only a few had expressed any gratitude towards Kakashi, and absolutely none to Sasuke. Which only infuriated him further that these people did not see him as the elite that he was. Despite the Uchiha's feelings, Team 7 along with Haku departed towards Konoha. With Kakashi and Sasuke walking in the front, and the other three bringing up the rear. Neither one of them trusting Sasuke to be behind them. With Tsunami, the newly made wave daimyo watched as her lover departed with his team. Smiling as she saw him turn around one last time to give her one last look to promise that he would return to visit her and help her learn her new Hanyu abilities. Knowing this, she sighed in contentment. This of course did not go unnoticed by her father, who looked to her. So what happened between the two of you? He asked in a tone that told her that he wanted a direct answer. Well, she blushed as she remembered the night they spent together in her new office. We had entered a consensual relationship. However, Tazuna was becoming upset as he had recalled the young boy had a girl in his home village as well. I'm afraid he played you. He frowned, viewing the blonde in a bad light. Before we left Heya was kissing his fiancée, Anko. Tsunami finished for him with a smirk, earning a shocked look from her father. No, he didn't play me. Naruto-kun is too much a gentleman for that. I merely accepted to be in a polyamorous relationship. Also, he plans to become part of something called a Clan Restoration Act since he is the sole survivor of two large clans in his village, which will legally allow him to take multiple wives. The elder bridge builder was shocked into silence. Though, he was glad that the blonde had not played his daughter and was open about his current relationship and plans for the future. Deep in the back of his mind thought, he was envious of the blonde who was about to live every mon's dream. Anyways, thank Kami things are finally getting better for our village. He said, earning a round of cheers from the surrounding villagers within earshot of him. Only for his daughter to chuckle. Kami had nothing to do with this father. She smiled. This is all thanks to Jashin-sama. At this revelation, the crowd had gone deathly silent, unsure of what to make of their new daimyo's proclamation. The one most shocked was her own father. The morning you left for Konoha, I had prayed to Jashin-sama to deliver us and cleanse our land of the corruption that had taken hold in the form of Gato and his men. You see, Jashin-sama only wants corrupt souls. Tsunami explained as she turned to address the villagers. During my prayer, Jashin-sama answered me, telling me that soon we would all be sheltered by the shadow of the fox. Shadow of the fox, Tazuna whispered to himself before his eyes widened in realization as he remembered the kanji on the back of the blonde's jacket. Many of the other villagers had come to the same conclusion as the blonde hardly ever took his jacket off. Naruto-kun is Jashin-sama's champion. Tsunami smiled before turning to the crowd once more. And that is why I say that Jashin-sama has delivered us from the corruption that had gripped our homes. At this, the crowd erupted in applause and cheers, causing the Jashinist to smile at their acceptance. It was then she felt a small tug on her dress and looked down to see a young girl look up at her. Kneeling down, she asked what the young girl required. Does that mean we all have to become Jashinist? She asked, once again prompting the crowd to grow silent once more. However, Tsunami merely smiled. No, you are free to follow your own faith. She replied as she stood up to look at the crowd once more. Everyone is free to follow their own faith, so long as they respect each other's beliefs. Those that do wish to know more about Jashin-sama are free to come to me with questions. With one last cheer, the crowd began to disperse. Though a large portion had surprisingly stuck around to discuss their new daimyo's faith and get a better understanding of it. It was then that Tsunami turned to her still shocked son and smiled at him. Next time you see Naruto-kun, feel free to call him Tu-san. She smiled, and chuckled under her breath at the gobsmacked look on her son's face. I need a drink, Tazuna said as he wandered off to the local bar. A week and a half later, Konohagakure. Naruto was irritated, tired, and mentally exhausted. He hadn't slept at all the entire trip back since his lazy sensei seemed to have taken the scenic route back to the village, as it had taken nearly double the time to return. Though he knew the reason why. It became obvious the very first night they had set up camp. Roughly 4 hours after everyone had bedded down for the night, Sasuke had attempted to enact some of his vengeance on Haku, and probably would have succeeded if Naruto hadn't stayed up to guard her the entire night. As expected, Kakashi didn't arrive until well after the Uchiha had approached the ice user's tent. Though the masked Jonin had seemed disappointed that Naruto had stopped Sasuke, however had still given the Uchiha a light lecture, if only to keep his appearance in case something were to happen, he could claim that he at least attempted to prevent it. Still, each night Sasuke would attempt to harm Haku and each time he would be stopped by Naruto, and each time Kakashi would arrive late. It had become old fast. Even Sakura had noticed and was beginning to feel even more uneasy about the Uchiha and her sensei. So much so that she began sleeping in Haku's tent so she could be close to Naruto, not knowing that her blonde teammate hadn't slept at all the entire trip back. The blonde Hanyu's only real saving grace was a few nights before they had arrived at the village gates, he had Ari possess his body so that he could at least allow his mind to sleep for a few hours. However, he couldn't risk it for too long, since when she possessed his body, his eyes would change to red slits instead of his cerulean blue. Still, after an extremely long trip, they had finally made it back to the village, and was now on their way to the Hokage Tower to report their mission complete. Kakashi had decided early on that it would be in his best interest to be as honest as possible in his report. Especially with the threat of Naruto and Sakura both willing to have their memories viewed. Still, he would try to swing it in a favorable light for the Uchiha. Sasuke in a foul mood because he was unable to exact his revenge on the ice user. Hokage's office, the elder village leader looked over the team that had just arrived with their +1. Taking in the differences from when they had originally left, he knew that something had happened on this mission, with the way Sakura was now fully behind Naruto, almost as if she was hiding from the other member of her team. Beside her was the new individual that had returned with them. It also didn't go unnoticed that the trio were keeping their distance from both Kakashi and Sasuke. Report, Jonin Kakashi, the Hokage ordered. It had taken the span of nearly an hour for the silver-haired Jonin to detail nearly everything that had happened during their mission. From the discovery that it wasn't just a simple C-rank mission, to the attack from Zabuza. Begrudgingly admitting that Naruto had saved him from the water sphere, though still maintained that the blonde had acted too recklessly and potentially endangered his team. Finally, he reported what had transpired on the bridge in the final battle. Also mentioning that Naruto had violated his order to have everyone present on the bridge, though once again reluctantly admitted it was for the best considering the attack on the family shortly they had left. Finally, he reported the incident between Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura. Still maintaining that the Uchiha must have done it by accident in the heat of the moment. This only earned a scoff from Naruto, which did not go unnoticed by Hiruzen, prompting the elder village leader to hold the boy afterwards. As I understand it, you wish to join our village, Ms. Haku? The elder man asked, turning his attention to the ice user. That is correct, Hokage-sama. She replied with confidence. Zabuza-sama said he wanted me to have a more stable environment so that I could be safe. And where is Zabuza now? Hiruzen asked. He is helping the rebels in the Kiri civil war right now, to free his home. Naruto stated, earning a glare from the masked Jonin, though the blonde shrugged it off. It is good to hear a shinobi of his talent has found something worth fighting for. The Hokage smiled before turning back to Haku. Protocol dictates that due to your prior involvement with a missing nin, you are to be placed on probation for 6 months, as well as submit to interrogation sessions for 1 month. Do you accept? I do, Hokage-sama. She firmly replied, showing her resolve to join the village. Very well, he signaled one of the Anbu that was hidden in the room. Bring me Anko. Instantly, the Anbu vanished in a swirl of leaves, before returning a few seconds later with the snake mistress, who had immediately jumped on Naruto, causing the old man to gawk at the scene. However, the Hokage could only chuckle at the sight before him after he had gotten over his shock. He had known of the two's relationship, and knew all too well the worries of a long-term mission outside of the village. Anko, Hiruzen coughed, if you wouldn't mind waiting until you two are in a more private setting, we have important things to discuss. I don't know if I can wait that long, Hokage-sama. Anko grinned. I'm tempted to borrow your desk for a few hours. The implications caused all the males, -1, and 1 female to have a slight nosebleed. Both Kakashi and Hiruzen was imagining something like that happening in their favorite Orange Book series, whilst Sakura was being assaulted of images of her and Naruto on the desk by her inner self. Meanwhile, Haku was severely blushing. Anyways, what do you need, old man? The snake mistress asked, snapping everyone out of their stupor. Haku here wishes to join the village. Hiruzen informed her, I am assigning you as her personal handler during her probation. Sweet, I get a new friend. She exclaimed as she grabbed hold of Haku's hand and dragged her to the door. Though not before stopping by Naruto and giving him a deep kiss. After the kiss was broken, Naruto leaned in and whispered something in the snake mistress's ear, getting a nod from her before the two girls left the office. Now, if that is all, Team 7, you are dismissed. Due to the difficulty of the mission, your team has the week off. No missions, and you will each be given pay for an A- rank mission. The Hokage stated, Naruto, please stay. There is something I would like to discuss with you. Nodding, Naruto turned to see his pink-haired teammate look unsure of what to do. It was clear to him that she didn't want to be too far away from him. Giving her a soft smile, he pulled her into a gentle hug to reassure her that it would be fine. If you need someone to talk to, I'll be at my apartment later. He is behind the third loose board on the wall, he whispered to her, earning a nod in confirmation before she left the office. I take it that Kakashi's report wasn't entirely accurate. Hiruzen began, having witnessed the interaction between the two just now. And why do you look dead on your feet, Naruto-kun? To answer the last question first, I haven't slept the entire trip back. Naruto sighed. Why is that? One Sasuke Uchiha wanting to get revenge on Haku, as you know she humiliated him during the fight on the bridge. The blonde answered, and of course, Kakashi would always arrive after he had already attempted. As for the report, surprisingly Kakashi was honest, except you know as well as I that you cannot, accidentally, use the kawarimi on a living being. He continued, earning a nod from the elder man. Though he did accuse me of stealing Yugao's moon dance style. When Hiruzen had heard what the Uchiha had done, he was furious at the boy's arrogance. Sadly, he knew that any punishment attempted to be doled out to the Uchiha would be blocked by the Elder Council, not to mention the riot the Civilian Council would make. Is that all, Naruto-kun? The Hokage asked. Actually, there is something I would like to discuss with you. Naruto said, catching the attention of the older man. It's personal, so if you could dismiss the Anbu for the moment. Though Neko-chan is allowed to stay, as it does involve her. This immediately got the old monk's attention. Promptly he dismissed his Anbu as Neko joined them on the floor before activating his privacy seals. What is this about Naruto-kun and why does it involve Anbu Neko? Though he didn't miss how the female Anbu was acting a little excited, as if she knew exactly what the blonde was about to say. Truth is GG, I know who my parents are, Naruto stated matter-of-factly, and as the last heir of the Uzumaki clan from my mother, Kushina Uzumaki. And as the sole heir of the Namikaze clan from my father, Minato Namikaze. Otherwise known as the Yondaime Hokage. I wish to enter myself into the Clan Restoration Act, though on my terms. Needless to say, Hiruzen was speechless. With Sakura, the Pinkett slowly made her way to her home. She had purposely held back to make sure that both Sasuke and Kakashi were nowhere near her. While she had come to terms with what had happened, she still didn't feel safe around neither of them. Sasuke because he was the one who had used her as a shield to take a blow meant for him, and Kakashi because despite the evidence, the man continued to defend the prick's actions. Shuddering at the memory, Sakura continued her trek home, opening the door to see her mother busily going about her duties within the home. Welcome home Sakura dear, her mother smiled and enveloped her daughter into a hug. While Sakura hugged her mother back, she had noticed something. Her mother's hug didn't feel anywhere near as warm or comforting as Naruto's had. This of course caused her to blush slightly, as she knew she didn't just have a crush on her blonde teammate. She had completely fallen for him. How was your mission? Mebukey asked with excitement, wanting to hear the details. Were you able to get closer to your Sasuke-kun? The last part made the Pinkett frown a bit in disgust. Mission was fine mom, I was able to learn a lot of new things to better progress my career as a kunoichi. Sakura answered honestly, though tried to avoid any mentioning of the emo duck. And what about Sasuke-kun? Her mother smiled. Were you able to get any closer to your destined husband? Actually, I no longer have a crush on the Uchiha. She answered bluntly, and I no longer have any interest in pursuing him. I am just going to focus on my training so I can be a better kunoichi. This of course prompted the older woman to look at her daughter in shock. What happened my dear? She asked. Other than the fact the bastard tried to kill me. Sakura seethed at the memory, catching her mother off guard. That son of a bitch used a kawarimi on me so I can take the hit meant for him. Mebukey nearly sighed and brought her daughter into another hug. Sometimes we must make sacrifices to show the ones we love how far we will go for them. The woman smiled, causing Sakura's eyes to widen in shock at what her mother was saying. Like I said dear, you are destined to be married to him and you too will give me lots of grandchildren to spoil. Sakura was stunned as she was released from the hug her mother had held on her. She doesn't even care that I could have died because of his actions. She thought to herself, while her inner self was seething in anger. It's just a shame that the demon brat didn't get himself killed. Mebukey commented offhandedly, would have done the village a huge favor if he never made it back. She's talking about Naruto-kun. Inner Sakura exclaimed, her anger rising even further at the woman. Sakura herself could only mentally agree as her physical form was still in shock. Slowly she made her way to the stairs to go to her bedroom. Inner, I really don't think I can stay in this house tonight. The Pinkett mentally told her counterpart. Well, Naruto-kun said we could go to his apartment if we needed anyone to talk to. Inner reminded her, you're right, except, I don't know where he lives. Well, mother dear, as on the civilian council, I bet she has his address somewhere in her office. Inner stated, with clear indication that she was not very fond of the woman right now. Especially with the amount of venom that was dripping off the word, mother. Are you all right dear? Her mother asked as she saw her daughter going up the stairs. Just tired, was all Sakura replied with, not really wanting to be around the woman at this point. Okay dear, I have to leave for a council meeting, Mebuki announced as she grabbed her stuff and left the house, unaware of her daughter's own thoughts. Sakura watched as her mother left before quickly producing a shadow clone of her own to keep watch while she made a beeline towards the woman's office. She knew the woman had the boy's address, since every council member was given an up-to-date list of all the citizens, their addresses and their status within the village. It wasn't hard to find Naruto, as his name had been scribbled out and the words, Demon Brat, written above them. Memorizing the address, Sakura closed the address book and was about to leave before something caught her eye. Laying open on the desk was her mother's diary. Curiosity getting the better of her, she sat down and began to read some of the entries. Becoming more shocked and appalled by her mother's actions as tears formed in her eyes. Inside the diary, detailed every fox hunt she had organized in hopes of killing the child. Only to be prevented each time by Anbu. Their closest success had been on the boy's 6th birthday. After that, many of the entries detailed the woman's frustration that there had not been any successful hunts for years after the boy turned 6, due to the child mysteriously vanishing from sight. Wiping the tears away, Sakura stood up and left the house. With her newest discovery, she knew that she couldn't stand to look at her own mother, let alone live in the same house as her. Her destination set, Sakura quickly navigated her way towards where the blonde resided. It didn't take her long to arrive in front of the apartment complex. She could see the telltale signs of attempted graffiti and vandalism, causing her anger to rise once more. Quickly, she made her way to his door, and found the spare key he had told her about. Once unlocked, she placed the key back into its hiding spot, before she disappeared into the apartment. Locking the door behind her, once inside, Sakura took in her surroundings. For some reason, she had half expected the place to be a mess, but surprisingly it was clean and well organized. Realizing she really had nothing to do, as she had only come with what she had from the mission. Slowly, she gravitated toward his bedroom and sat down on the bed. Letting out a long sigh as she laid down. This was how Naruto found the pink-haired girl when he arrived home some hours later. The talk with the Hokage had gone on far longer than he had wanted, but the details had to be ironed out. Currently, he was pretty much already in the CRA. Being the last of 2 large clans, even if he hated his father, he would still use what was presented to him. Not to mention his bloodline. Fortunately, the old man had scheduled the council meeting for late tomorrow afternoon to give the young blonde time to sleep. Smiling as he looked over Sakura's sleeping form, he draped a blanket over her before leaving the room and closing the door behind him. Opting to take the couch for the night, the window to Naruto's room quietly slid open as a lithe figure entered the dark room. A mischievous grin on their face as they eyed the lump laying in the bed that was barely visible due to the lack of light. Completely vulnerable, stripping out of their tan trench coat and body mesh outfit, the figure slipped under the covers with her unsuspecting victim. Her grin widening as she cuddled up close to the other sleeping form in the bed. Tenderly, she snaked her arms around the other, planting light kisses on the back of his neck, eliciting a small moan of pleasure from the other. It's been over a month, Foxy-kun, and we have to make up for lost time. Was Anko's thoughts as she continued to feel up his body, tracing her fingers along his sides, causing her lover to shiver in pleasure, ever so slowly snaking her arm to his chest. And it's been so long since I felt your nicea firma tits. It was then that the other figure had woken up and let out a scream in shock and bolted up in a sitting position, looking at the intruder. Holy shit, Anko exclaimed as she kicked back from the other figure. Suddenly the room was flooded with light as the door slammed open, revealing a topless Naruto at the doorway with a short black blade in a reverse grip position, prompting both women to blush at the sight. Turning on the lights of the bedroom, he took in the sight before him. Anko was in one corner of the bed, whilst Sakura was on the other. Both looking at each other in complete shock. Anko-chan. Naruto sighed as he released the blade in his hand, allowing it to disappear into nothingness. I told you that you can't just force any cute girl you see into a threesome. Anko gave a nervous chuckle while Sakura only blushed at the compliment. Hey, sorry, you didn't come by like I thought you would last night, so I thought I would give you a surprise. The snake mistress explained. Looks like I was the one who was surprised. You're not the only one, Sakura stated, still blushing at the fur of Anko, using all of her willpower not to stare at the snake mistress. Not to mention, still feeling the phantom presence of when the woman had groped her. Sorry about that, Anko chuckled while scratching the back of her head, before turning to Naruto. So why didn't you come by? Sorry Anko-chan, my talk with the old man went on longer than I wanted it to. The blonde began with a sigh. And I just really wanted to get some sleep, since I didn't sleep for the past week and a half. Week and a half, Sakura thought to herself. That's how long it took us to get back to the village. That means that Naruto-kun didn't sleep at all on the trip back. Inner finished, clearly worried for the blonde. But why? The pinkett mentally questioned. I bet you it has something to do with that damn Uchiha. A inner seethed, earning a mental nod of agreement from her outer self. Why didn't you get any sleep? The snake mistress asked, concern laced in her voice. Can sum it up to one word. Naruto sighed. Uchiha. This caused both girls to scowl. As you know, Haku was under my custody during the trip back. And since she humiliated him at the bridge, he has been trying and failing to get revenge on her. The blonde continued. Every night, he would attempt to attack her in her sleep at random hours. It didn't help that Kakashi would always arrive a few minutes after the Uchiha would attempt his attack. So, I stayed up the entire trip back, using my chakra reserves to keep me energized. Bastard is playing with fire there. Anko stated, clearly angry about the whole thing. Haku was under the protection of the international shinobi laws of warfare. Any attack on her during her transport to the village could easily end his execution, and Hitaki's for allowing it to happen. Naruto-kun, why didn't you tell me? Sakura asked. I would have taken watch with you. I know Sakura-chan, but I didn't want to burden you after what had already happened. He gave her a comforting smile. Anyways, I still want to catch up on a few hours of sleep, so I'm going to go back to the couch. You know Naruto-kun, Anko grinned mischievously. You have 2 attractive women in your bed, and there is room for one more. This of course caused Sakura to blush even more, as a small trickle of blood came from her nose. Imagining various scenarios that could play out with all 3 of them in the same bed. Especially with the snake mistress still in her state, and Naruto dressed only in his sweatpants. To be honest, she would not object in the slightest if he chose to get in bed with them. However, to her disappointment, Naruto merely chuckled and went back to the couch. Anko quickly gathering up her clothing and rushing out of the room to join the blonde, though not before utterly another quick apology for the groping. Turning off the lights, and closing the door behind her, leaving the cherry blossom in the dark, still blushing. Oh my Kami, inner exclaimed. We just got groped by that bitch, and she even invited Naruto-kun to get in bed with both of us. Meanwhile, Sakura remained silent as her mind continued to assault her with images of the 3 of them in bed together. Laying back down, the pinkett had a perverted smile as she allowed herself to drift off to sleep. To dream of a fun fight night with her, Naruto and the snake mistress. At least she is finally accepting who she is. Inner smiled. A few hours later, it was mid-afternoon by the time Naruto woke up again. Anko had left a while ago to start her shift at the torture and interrogation building, as well as do her rounds with the newly arrived Haku. However, what caught the blonde's attention was the scent that wafted from the kitchen area. Getting up from the couch, he began to stretch, earning a series of pops and cracks from his bones, releasing a lot of built-up tension from his body. That done, he slowly made his way to the kitchen to find his pink-haired teammate at the stove, cooking what appeared to be bacon, eggs and hash browns. He had to be honest, it smelled great. Morning air, afternoon Sakura-chan. He greeted, prompting her to jump in surprise at his sudden voice. Afternoon, Naruto-kun, she blushed at his exposed upper body once more, as this was the first time she had seen him up close without his shirt on. I was just making something for you to eat when you woke up. Damn, that Uchiha bastard has nothing on Naruto-kun in the muscles department. Sakura thought to herself. Or any department for that matter. I bet he is even big, down there. Inner grinned, causing another blush from the poor pinkett. Are you okay, Sakura-chan? The blonde asked, noticing her face turning red. Yeah, just fine, she answered, almost in a squeaky voice, before shaking her thoughts away as she quickly dished up plates for the 2 of them. Though her inner self was snickering in the back of her mind, commenting on how it already looked like they were married and she was the doting housewife. So what did you talk to the Hokage about? As he sat down at the table, he let out a soft sigh. Well, first GG wanted to know how accurate Tata-sensei's report was. He began, taking a bite of the food in front of him, noting how good of a cook the pinkett was. I filled in what was left out, including pointing out that the Uchiha performed the kawarimi on purpose. Sakura flinched slightly at the memory. But that shouldn't have taken that long, should it? She asked. Well, I also had to talk to the old man about something important to me. He sighed, wondering how the pinkett would take this. I found out who my parents are, and more importantly, who they were. That's great, she exclaimed, clearly happy that he learned who his parents were. However, she didn't know the full extent. So who are they? Naruto could only chuckle at her excitement. Well, my mother's name is Kushina Uzumaki, otherwise known as the Red Death as well as the Red Hot-Blooded Habanero. Depending on who you ask. And your father, you're not going to believe this. He smiled, hiding his anger towards the man. He was none other than the Yonami Hokage. Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash. A loud clang could be heard as Sakura had dropped her fork in complete shock. That was my reaction as well. He lied. Okay, Sakura said, after snapping out of her shock. So your parents are 2 of the village's biggest heroes in the Third Shinobi War. So I guess this means something big is about to happen with you. Great deduction, Sakura-chan. He smiled. He really loved how smart she was, now that she was completely knocked out of her fangirl mindset. Always able to piece stuff together with minimal resources. Yes, I have a council meeting to attend here in a few hours. About what? About me putting myself into the CRA. He sighed. CRA, she asked. She had heard the acronym before, but never knew its meaning. Clan Restoration Act, he explained. Meaning, I will have to take multiple wives to rebuild not just one clan, but 2 clans. The Uzumaki and Namikaze. Sakura was silent for a handful of seconds at the revelation of this new information. In the span of 5 minutes, she had learned that her blonde teammate was the son of the previous Hokage, and one of the best Kenjutsu practitioners in all of the elemental nations, and now he was putting himself into something that would allow him to take multiple wives. See, I told you it would work out. Inner stated in excitement. Now you can share him with that snake mistress. So, basically you get to have your own harem. Sakura teased, making a joke of it. Though internally, she was conflicted about it. On one hand, she could be with him. On the other, she would have to share him with who knows how many other women. That is not my intent, Sakura-chan. He stated, ensuring she doesn't get the wrong idea. I am only doing this for one woman, so I don't have to hide her anymore. What do you mean? She frowned in confusion. Well, as you know, Anko-chan and I are dating and pretty much engaged already. He began. However, I have also been seeing another woman as well, with Anko-chan's approval, that I was engaged through an arranged marriage. Who is the other woman? She asked, a little curious and a little jealous. Yugao Azuki, otherwise known as Anbu Neko. He answered, watching the Pinkett for her reaction. He could see in her eyes as her emotions ranged from jealousy to understanding in the span of a few seconds. However, I know how the council works, especially the civilian side. When it comes out that I have a bloodline, they will try and force their daughters on me. Which is why I am preemptively striking and entering it on my own terms. Sakura frowned at that. She knew full well that the civilian council would force their own daughters into a loveless marriage just to elevate their own social status. I should probably get ready. He sighed as he washed off his plate. Thank you for breakfast, Sakura-chan, it was really good. Then, he did something she wasn't ready for. He gave her a small kiss on the cheek, causing her to blush intensely at the show of affection, before he disappeared into the bathroom to take a shower. It took a solid 5 minutes before the Pinkett snapped out of her daze and begun to clean up her own plate. After about 10 minutes, Naruto exited his bedroom fully dressed in his usual attire. Much to the disappointment of his pink-haired teammate, who had enjoyed gawking at his exposed chest and abs. Are you going to be okay by yourself today, Sakura-chan? Naruto asked, clearly still concerned of her emotional state. I think so. She tried to sound confident. I think I am just going to go to one of the training grounds and train for the afternoon. Naruto nodded as the two made their way out the door with the blonde locking the apartment behind him. Turning, he was surprised when Sakura had embraced him in a hug, which he returned. Hearing a sigh of content from the Pinkett before they broke apart to head to their own respective destinations. Unaware of a platinum blonde girl who had just witnessed the exchange. With Ino couldn't believe what she had just seen. What the hell is a forehead doing with Naruto Baka? The blonde-haired girl asked herself. Normally, the Yamanaka heiress wouldn't be in this side of the village, but her sensei had insisted that she deliver this bouquet of arranged flowers to Kurenai's sensei, who lived just past the red light district, right away. The blonde didn't know the details, but she had worked in her parents' shop long enough to know when a guy bought a woman a lot of flowers, it meant he screwed up and is trying to apologize. Though usually, most guys would take the flowers themselves, not send someone else. This of course prompted her to frown slightly. It truly felt like he was hiding something. Shaking her thoughts away, she focused back to the task at hand. Storing away the little tidbit about Sakura and Naruto to confront her former best friend later about it. It didn't take her much longer to arrive at the small house that the Genjutsu mistress resided in. Tentatively knocking on the door, Ino awaited the older woman to answer. She only had to wait a few more minutes before the door opened, revealing the ruby-eyed beauty. Afternoon, Kurenai-sensei, got a delivery for you. The blonde smiled as she presented the bouquet of arranged flowers, prompting the other woman to frown. Let me guess, from Asuma, right? She asked, not hiding her disdain towards the man in the slightest. Yeah, she replied hesitantly. Yup, Asuma-sensei up big time. Figures, cheating bastard doesn't even know what my favorite flowers are. Kurenai sighed, and he should know better than to try and get someone else involved. So, I am going to assume you will not be accepting the flowers. The blonde replied. Scratch that, he didn't up big time. He up on an astronomical scale. Sorry Ino-san, but no. The ruby-eyed woman sighed. I don't want anything to do with that bastard. Sorry to bother you then, Kurenai-sensei. Ino replied as she tossed the flowers into an open trash bin. It didn't matter to her, the flowers were already paid for. I got to get back to the shop, have a good day. Kurenai could only sigh as she saw the blonde girl run off. She knew full well why the cheating bastard had sent the girl to deliver the flowers. He was hoping having a third party would soften her up and put her in a position so that she wouldn't cause a scene. As the blonde girl fully disappeared, the genjutsu mistress returned to her home, though not before casting a cold glare at a group of bushes not far off from where she was. Knowing full well that the cheating bastard had been spying on her since Ino had arrived. She could feel Asuma seething in anger from his spot within the bushes. With Naruto, the blonde Hanyu sighed as he approached the Hokage tower. While he knew it was important to get this out of the way, he was not looking forward to it in the slightest. He was well aware of how the council members thought of him. Namely the civilian council, as well as the elder council. Fortunately, this was a shinobi and clan matter, which made the civilian council's opinion on the matter worth exactly squat. Though he couldn't deny, part of him was looking forward to seeing their reaction when they learned who his parents were. He knew full well that many of them would deny such a claim. Too bad for them that the old man had all the physical evidence required to prove it. Either way, it was going to be a headache. Arriving at his destination, the young blonde knocked on the large wooden doors. Getting permission, he entered the Hokage's office to see 4 of the elder man. 3 of which were doing the paperwork, and 1 that was leaning back reading a familiar orange book. "Arrow Hokage," he commented, earning a chuckle from the old man as he put his book away. "Are you ready, Naruto-kun?" the elder man asked, knowing that the young teen wasn't well liked amongst the civilian members of the council. At least the clan heads were at least neutral about the boy. "Not really, but let's get this over with GG so we can both relax." The blonde chuckled, following the village leader to the council chambers. Both taking a deep breath, the Hokage pushed open the doors revealing the council members of both sides loudly debating amongst themselves what the meeting could be about. Upon seeing the 2 enter the room, the council went silent. Both the civilian and shinobi council wondering what the blonde genin was doing there. "Hokage-sama, what is that brat doing here?" demanded a fat civilian councilman. "Mind your tone with me, councilman," Hiruzen stated with authority, unleashing a moderate bout of killer intent. Forcing the arrogant councilman to cower in his chair. Reigning in his killer intent, the Hokage turned to address the rest of the council. "Now then, this meeting is now in session. Hokage-sama, what is the purpose of this meeting?" Inoichi asked, earning a round of murmurs. All of them wondering the same thing. "This meeting serves 2 purposes," Hiruzen stated, sitting down in his chair at the end of the U-shaped table. "The first, is announcing the heritage of young Uzumaki Naruto, and who his parents are." "And just who is Uzumaki-san's parents?" asked a bandaged elder by the name of Danzo, his only exposed eye observing the young blonde in great detail. Though it went unnoticed how the elder man was tightly gripping his cane. This was not part of Minato's plan. "His parents are none other than Kushina Uzumaki, and Minato Namikaze." The elder village leader answered, bracing himself for the onslaught of shouts that were about to follow. As expected, the civilian side erupted in a flurry of shouts of denial. Tossing out accusations that it was all a lie and that there was no way that the demon brat was related to their revered Yondaime. The clan heads on the other hand were silent as they digested this bit of information. Some, such as Tsume and Shika had already known. Meanwhile others like Hiashi was contemplative. "Silence," Hiruzen shouted, unleashing another wave of killer intent. "I don't give a damn if you like it or not." And to solidify this revelation, here are Naruto's birth certificate and blood sample. Proving the boy's lineage, the Hokage continued as he provided the proper papers to be passed along the clan head's side. Each nodding in agreement with the Hokage's claim. "So the pup is the son of my best friend and blood sister." Tsume grinned at the boy, even though she had already known long ago. "Sorry pup, if it wasn't for the arrogant asses over there, I would have brought you into the pack a long time ago." "It's okay Suma-sama," Naruto smiled. "I know you tried to adopt me many times with each time being blocked by the civilian council." "Cut the Sama bullshit, just call me Tsume, pup." The feral woman laughed. "These are genuine," Danzo stated as he set the papers back on the table. "Now, what is the second purpose of this meeting, Hokage-sama?" Hiruzen eyed the bandaged elder suspiciously before continuing. "Due to Naruto-kun's heritage, he is the last of both the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans." He began. Already he could see the clan heads nodding their heads in understanding, while the civilian side scowled in anger. As such, Naruto-kun has submitted himself for the Clan Restoration Act to revive these 2 clans within Konoha, under his own terms. Which is simply, that he gets to choose his would-be wives. "Absolutely not," a blonde woman on the civilian side exclaimed. "I will not allow it. Unfortunately for you, Mebuki," Hiashi stated, glaring at the woman, prompting her to quickly sit down and shut up. "This is a clan and shinobi affair, meaning the civilian council is now say in the matter. You are merely here as a courtesy, nothing more. Furthermore, young Naruto-kun has awakened an extremely rare bloodline as well, which doubles his status within the Clan Restoration Act even further." Hiruzen stated. This of course caused the bandaged war hawk to perk up in interest. "And what is his bloodline?" inquired the bandaged elder. "It's called a Kurozanda, or dark blood," Naruto answered as he watched over the various council members' actions. However, he stopped when he looked upon the bandaged man. The young Hanyu could see the gears turning in the mon's head, prompting Naruto to narrow his eyes slightly. "Be careful around him Naruto-kun," Ari stated, feeling uneasy about the man. He gives off a dark aura. I feel it too, Ari-chan. Naruto mentally replied. No doubt he is plotting to make either my power or myself his own to control. What exactly can this bloodline do, Uzumaki-san? Asked the blonde man. Well, to be honest, Inoichi-sama, I am still learning about it. The blonde answered, not wanting to reveal too much about what he can do with it. From what I have learned, I have mastery of darkness and shadows. He proved his point by summoning one of his dark blade weapons. A simple, tanto-length blade. Nothing too fancy, but enough to show only part of what he could really do with his powers. Then allowing it to dissipate. That power should belong to Uchiha-sama, exclaimed one of the civilian council members, with the rest vocally agreeing with the person demands. We demand that you teach Uchiha-sama those powers immediately. First off, you can't teach a bloodline to another who doesn't have it, you dumb cunt. Naruto replied, his tone even. And as it is clearly a shinobi matter, I am not obligated to adhere to your demands, councilman. This bloodline is fascinating, Danzo stated, looking to get more information about it. Is there anything else you can do with it? No, as I said, I am still learning as it is an extremely rare bloodline. The blonde answered, looking to the Hokage whom seemed to get the idea of what the boy was doing. Now then, moving on to the final purpose of this meeting. Hiruzen began, moving the topic away from the boy's bloodline, much to the old Warhawk's anger. Those of the Shinobi Council in favor of submitting Naruto into the Clan Restoration Act to revive both the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, as well as expand Naruto Shikurozanda bloodline, raise your hand. Much to the disappointment of the entire civilian council, the entirety of the Shinobi Council silently raised their hands, showing their acceptance of the boy being submitted into the CRA. Shocking the civilian side even further was the fact that Danzo had also raised his hand as well, prompting the other two elders to do the same. This of course did not go unnoticed by the elder Hokage, narrowing his eyes as he wondered what the old war hawk was up to. Very well, through a unanimous vote, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze has been submitted into the Clan Restoration Act. Congratulations, Naruto-kun, Hiruzen smiled. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto replied, bowing before the elder man in a show of respect, before also doing the same to the Shinobi Council. And thank you all for giving me this opportunity. Think nothing of it, pup. Tsume smiled. Now, I can approach him and Anko about allowing Hana to marry him. Forgive me for asking Uzumaki-san, Inoichi began. But I am curious if you already have any potential brides. I do, Inoichi-sama. The blonde teen grinned sheepishly. And who might that be, if I may ask? Inquired Danzo. Well, it is no secret that I am dating Anko Midarashi, soon to be Uzumaki. The teen smiled as he thought of how he was going to surprise his snake mistress. Of course the snake whore with the dem. Mebuki began before being cut off as she felt a blade pressed against her throat. Out of the corner of her eyes, she could just barely make out the Neko Anbu standing just behind her, sword in hand. Finish that sentence, Neko whispered coldly. Please, allow me to introduce my second fiancé. Naruto chuckled as the councilwoman's eyes went wide in shock and horror. Hiruzen nodded to the Neko Anbu, signaling her to remove her mask. As this was a matter that concerned her as well. Smirking, Yugao removed her blade from the woman's throat and secured her sword before removing her mask to show her beautiful face. Yugao Azuki, Naruto continued as the purple-haired woman made her way over to where her mate was standing. Also, a very close friend of Anko-chan, so I would advise you to keep any unwanted comments to yourself. This is certainly a surprise. Tsume laughed. She had to admit, the pup had already attracted too strong Kunoichi. Even better, both were good friends of Hana. Before we close this meeting, is there anything you would like to add, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked, turning to the blonde. Just one, Hokage-sama. He replied before turning to address the council. While I reserve the right to choose my prospective wives, you are welcome to send your daughters to talk with me. However, I will not have anyone forced into a loveless marriage. Very good, pup, the Inuzuka matriarch stated, a sense of pride for the boy swelling up inside her. Just as I thought, he will treat all the women he is with love and respect. With that, I bring this meeting to a close, Hiruzen stated as he got up from his chair. Neko, you may have the rest of the day off. Naruto-kun, please accompany me to my office so that I may give you your inheritance your parents left for you. Thank you, Hokage-sama. The purple-haired woman bowed before taking her mate's hand and walking out of the room. Ignoring the glares coming from the civilian council. Meanwhile, Hiyashi was watching the two walk out the door. He knew the blonde was responsible for his daughter's increased confidence, even if he didn't know the details as Hinata had been silent when approached about it. Though he wasn't too pleased about her new fashion sense. However, upon learning who Naruto was involved with, he knew who to blame. Though he couldn't help but chuckle silently at the whole ordeal. The Hyuga elders had complained when she wasn't strong enough, now they were complaining she was too strong and that she lacked respect for their position. Many times, they had pushed to have the caged bird seal placed upon her, in favor of her younger sister Hanabi becoming the clan heir. Now doubt thinking that the younger sister would be more malleable to their manipulations. Perhaps I should send Hinata to court the boy. The Hyuga clan head thought to himself. With the boy being from two notable clans, I can avoid having to put the seal on her and perhaps give her a chance to be happy for once. Despite what many would believe, the man loved his daughters to death and hated seeing them pushed into a position of conflict with each other due to the clan elders' staunch traditions. Perhaps I should also encourage Hanabi to visit her sister frequently afterwards to keep her from being manipulated by those old fossils. He mused, how he hated the elders of his clan, and aimed to one day be rid of them. However, he had to wait for them to make a mistake. It was like a never-ending game of shogi between the two. With a sigh, the Hyuga head stood from his chair and left the room with the others. Hokage's office, a few minutes later, found the young blonde back in the office of the village leader. Yugao had excused herself to hang up her gear, with the promise of meeting up with her mate at her and Anko's favorite dango stand. Now, you parents left me a few scrolls to pass on to you when I thought you were ready. Hiruzen stated as he laid 5 scrolls down on his desk. These are the deeds to both of your parents' respective clan compounds, as I am sure you are going to want to move out of that small apartment. Especially with your fiancés. Thanks GG. The blonde chuckled. So what are your plans, Naruto-kun? The old man asked, curious as to what the young teen would do. Honestly, I am not sure, he admitted with a frown. However, I am probably going to merge both bank accounts to make it easier to keep track of the funds, and keep my personal account as a reserve account. Well, they are yours to do with as you please. The old man stated with a kind smile, before rummaging through his desk, only to produce a small map with 2 red circles on it. Here is the location of both compounds. I trust you will want to look over your parents' estates. Thanks GG. The boy smiled as he secured the inheritance scrolls into his jacket with a blood seal. I will see about getting Anko-chan and Yugao-chan to help me move in. I'm sure they will be happy too. The elder man chuckled. I better get going. Yugao-chan won't be happy if I am late. Hiruzen only chuckled as the blonde Hanyu departed his office. The old man couldn't help but think that his parents would be proud of the man he was becoming. With Yugao, the purple-haired Anbu woman was nervous and excited at the same time. The day had finally come that she could be openly affectionate with her mate, and she was looking forward to rubbing in the face of a certain individual that just couldn't get the hint that she was not interested in him in the slightest. Yugao-san, you got the day off, came a voice from behind her, prompting the purple-haired beauty to look at the newcomer. Hokage-sama gave me the afternoon off to spend time with my fiancé. She answered honestly, though she did have a bone to pick with the masked jonin. I hear you had a busy month. You have no idea, he sighed, ordering a bottle of sake. First the client lied about the mission, then having to fight against Zabuza. It was just one thing after another. Not to mention Naruto refusing to follow directions. I am just glad that Sasuke was there to pick up the slack. Yugao narrowed her eyes at the silver-haired jonin for the last comment. Though a small grin appeared on her face as she realized that he didn't know she was in the office when he had given his report to the Hokage. I also heard that you accused Naruto-kun of stealing my moon dance technique. She smirked. Naruto-kun, Kakashi pondered to himself, wondering why an Anbu woman was referring to the blonde in such a way. I had assumed he did since you have refused to teach anyone your style. Kakashi tried to defend himself. I will make it clear, there is only one person who has stolen my technique, and that is Hayate. The purple-haired woman seethed, still infuriated that the man had the audacity to not only steal her style, but completely butcher it. He was only trying to impress you. The silver-haired man replied, not fully understanding why the woman refused to give his friend a chance. And he only insulted me. Yugao replied with venom. If you trained Naruto, maybe you would consider training Sasuke in Kenjutsu. Kakashi suggested, trying to give his prized student an edge in his training. No, was her short reply. Are you sure? Sasuke is a promising student and shows great potential in his training. The masked jonin attempted to elevate the boy higher to make him sound more enticing. I would bet he would take to it faster than Naruto did. My answer is no, and that is final. Yugao stated matter-of-factly. For the simple reason, the Uchiha doesn't respect the art of the sword. Naruto-kun does. That is why I trained him in my style. Kakashi could only frown, a little disappointed that the woman wouldn't even consider training the last Uchiha. However, he knew there was nothing he could do to change her mind. Perhaps Hayate could train Sasuke in swords, since he was almost as good as Yugao. Hey Yugao-chan, Anko exclaimed as she jumped on the back of the purple-haired woman, eliciting a chuckle from Naruto as he walked up to join them. The two had met up as Naruto left the Hokage Tower and had decided to meet up with Yugao together. However, Naruto did not miss the frown on his sensei's face when he showed up. I was given the day off since we were light on prisoners today. The snake mistress stated happily as she sat down a stool away from the Anbu woman, allowing Naruto to sit between them. I couldn't help but notice that you were getting close with the client's daughter during our mission, Naruto. Kakashi stated, eyeing the blonde and the snake mistress to gauge their reactions. What was that about, Tada-sensei? Are you trying to imply that I am unfaithful to my mate? The blonde questioned, hiding his smirk. From the corner of his eye, he could see the snake mistress doing her best to hold in her desire to burst out laughing. If the shoe fits, the masked Jonin shrugged with a grin as he waited for the fireworks to start between the two. Were you flirting with another woman, Naruto-kun? Anko hissed out, though the way she did it made her sound more seductive than upset. You know me, hubby Haim. The blonde shrugged. I just can't resist strong and beautiful women. And what did I tell you about flirting with other women? The snake mistress continued. Meanwhile Yugao was doing all she could to keep herself from laughing at the two. To invite you to join. Naruto replied, trying to sound depressed. Exactly, Anko stated. As your punishment, you will have to make love to me until I am satisfied. Kakashi could only stare in shock. He had expected yelling, screaming, and maybe even the blonde being slapped around. He was not expecting the snake mistress to actually encourage such behavior from the boy. Without a doubt, if he wasn't wearing his face mask, Kakashi's jaw would be on the floor right now. Not the reaction you were expecting, Tata-sensei. The blonde asked with a grin, earning a scowl from his supposed sensei while the two women burst out laughing, unable to hold it in any longer. So, how was she? Anko asked innocently. 8 years of pent-up frustration. He answered, damn, and I thought I had it bad with only 4 years. The snake mistress stated, yup, I don't think there was a single piece of furniture we didn't use in her new office after she was elected the new wave daimyo. He commented, desk, couch, chair, footrest. Nothing was untouched. Anko could only shake her head in response as she chuckled, imagining how it would be if they recreated the scene at home. Meanwhile, Kakashi had decided he had enough and got up to leave. Once more disappointed that things didn't go as he had hoped. However, shortly after the masked Jonin had left, the group's conversation was interrupted once more. Yugao-chan, Hayate greeted as he approached the three. You get the day off. Yes, Hokage-sama gave me the rest of the afternoon off so that I may spend time with my fiancé who had just gotten back from his mission. The purple-haired woman replied, hiding her smirk. Here it comes, Naruto-kun. Ari giggled, as she could see what was about to happen. Oh, he is going to hate me. The blonde mentally chuckled, knowing full well what his mate was about to do. Too bad Tata-tem didn't stick around to see this. The kitsune girl giggled. I see, the other man stated, taking a seat next to Yugao, trying to be as close to her as possible. So, where is he? Not bothering to reply to the man, Yugao merely turned towards Naruto, pulled him into a deep kiss in front of Hayate. However, she was not done with just that. As the two continued to kiss, their tongues fighting for dominance, the purple-haired woman moved to straddle the blonde's waist in the stool, allowing her hips to grind against his own. To push it even further, Naruto allowed his hands to wander down to her rear, giving it a good squeeze, eliciting a moan from the woman. Hayate couldn't believe what he was seeing. The woman that was the object of his desire was making out with a boy nearly half his own age. This caused anger to swell up inside him. Wow, what the hell is this? He stammered, clearly infuriated at the sight, prompting the two to end their dry humping session. That was me making out with my fiancé, Yugao stated as she slipped out of Naruto's lap, though still held him in a loving embrace. Taking full advantage that she could be openly affectionate to her mate now. Now that that's out of the way, Naruto stated, a cold look on his face as he stared at the man that had been, for lack of a better word, stalking his fiancé. You will leave my fiancé alone, Hayate Gecko. Are you fucking serious, Yugao? Hayate exclaimed, dropping the affection suffix from her name in his anger. He is a fucking kid. A little fucking brat. You could do so much better with a real man like me. The moment he put on his forehead protector, he became an adult, and that is good enough for me. The purple-haired woman grinned, enjoying the show of man who had constantly harassed her blow a gasket. As fun as this is, ladies, let's go check out the new place and get it ready for the party tonight. Naruto commented, chuckling at the man still seething in anger. Wrapping his arms around both of his girls, they trio made their way across the village where the Uzumaki compound was located. A few minutes later, the three of them stood in front of a large pair of gates that had some vines covering them from the years of lack of use. Anko couldn't help but whistle at the impressive size of the place. On their way to the compound, Naruto had created about a dozen shadow clones to pack up his stuff from the apartment to begin moving it into his new home. As well as sending one to find and inform Sakura of his change of address. Well, let's see what's inside. The blonde replied as he cut his thumb and smeared the blood on the gate, activating the seals. The three watched as the gates slowly opened, allowing them entrance to the property. To their surprise, despite the appearance of the outer gate, the inside looked as if it had been kept in perfect condition due to the seals that Kushina had put around the property to ensure everything was kept organized and well maintained. The wonders of seals, Naruto mused as he led his two fiancés into the home. So, you two are going to move in with me, right? You bet your I am, Anko exclaimed, and we are so using every piece of furniture in this house. Yugao could only chuckle at her friend and future sister-wife's antics. Though she silently agreed that she would be moving in with her fiancé. Clearly there was more than enough rooms as Kushina had intended to have a massive family. For the next few hours, the three of them explored every inch of the compound. Anko making lewd suggestions of what position they would use in whatever room and so forth. Meanwhile Yugao was fascinated by the size of the training yard behind the home, as it was clearly designed for a kenjutsu practitioner. Naruto on the other hand, was looking over the countless pictures his mother had left in the house. Pictures of his great-grandmother, Naruto Uzumaki. Like his mother, she also had fiery red hair and piercing eyes. One thing he had noticed was that there was not a single picture of his father anywhere in the house. Almost as if he was erased from all of them. Probably through the use of some kind of seal, if he had to guess. Welcome home, Naruto-kun. Ari smiled from inside his mind. I just wish I could have grown up in this house with her. He commented, allowing his finger to trace over a picture of his mother. I know Naruto-kun, but Kushina-chan wouldn't want you to dwell in the past. She commented, earning a nod in agreement from her host. Anyways, let's get ready for the party tonight. He smiled as he turned his attention back towards his shadow clones that were beginning to unpack his belongings into the master bedroom. While Anko had claimed the one closest to it, the blonde could only chuckle, knowing full well that his snake mistress had plans for him tonight. Nighttime, Uzumaki Estate. Sounds of laughter and cheerful chatter filled the compound for the first time in a long time as Naruto, Anko, Yugao, Hinata, and even Sakura chatted amongst each other. To the blonde Hanyu's surprise, Hinata had told him that her father had given her permission to seek out a relationship with the boy and had encouraged her to attend tonight's celebration. Sakura on the other hand was completely shocked that not only was her blonde teammate engaged to both Anko and Yugao, but was also in a relationship with the Hyuga heiress as well. However, as she watched them converse, she could see how much the three loved him, and how he returned their love. Seeing this only made her fall for him more and reassured her that he would treat her the same when she finally worked up the courage to confess to him. About 2.5 hours into the party, an intoxicated Hinata and Anko dragged Naruto away to his bedroom, leaving the cherry blossom alone with a chuckling Yugao. Meanwhile inner Sakura was teasing her outer self with a play-by-play of what the three were about to do, even providing some mental images, though adding herself into the mixture. Prompting the poor Pinkett to blush up a storm. So, you're on the same team as Naruto-kun, huh? Yugao inquired, striking up a conversation with the Pinkett. Yeah, Sakura replied, it's ironic now that I think about. At first I was disappointed to be on the same team as him, only to learn more from him in a matter of weeks than I ever did with Tada-sensei. Naruto-kun is an extremely skilled shinobi. The purple-haired woman giggled. He's had training from myself, Anko-chan, and others. Wonder if the Kyuubi has helped train him. The cherry blossom thought to herself, before slightly narrowing her eyes. But she said, others, as in more than one. I wonder who they could be. So, when did you realize you were in love with Naruto-kun? The Anbu woman smirked, as she gauged the reaction of her companion. Inwardly chuckling as she saw a blush creep across her face. How did you know? It's written all over your face, and whenever you talk about him. Yugao answered, that obvious, huh? The Pinkett sounded a little depressed that the woman was able to read her too clearly. Chin up, I'm an Anbu. The other woman grinned, I'm supposed to notice subtle things. I guess. Sakura smiled a little as she began to recall just when she realized she had fallen for her blonde teammate. I guess I realized it when my mother hugged me. It felt cold and restrictive. Not how when Naruto-kun hugged me, when it felt warm and comforting. Promising me that I would be safe. But if I had to guess when it started, I would say just before we left for our mission in Wave. She continued, a few days before we left, he helped me train in stuff Tada-sensei hadn't even mentioned before. Even after I had been a complete bitch to him, he helped me train because he didn't want me to get hurt or killed on a mission. That's just how he is. Yugao smiled. She loved that her mate was compassionate to others, but at the same time she knew he could be downright cruel to those who deserved it. So, how did the three of you start dating Naruto-kun? The Pinkett asked, curious as to how it all happened. Well, some years ago Naruto-kun saved Anko-chan's life. Since then, she had been inseparable from him. The purple-haired woman answered vaguely, not wanting to give away too much to the pink-haired girl. As for Hinata-chan, well, the girl has always had a crush on him. And after he broke her out of her shyness, and boasted her confidence, it had only elevated her crush on him even more. Kind of funny now that her and Anko act like sisters. What about you? My case is a bit more complex and simple at the same time. She sighed, wondering how to explain her attraction to her mate. You see, both Naruto-kun and I were in an arranged marriage, and only found each other a few years ago. So your parents arranged it? Sakura asked, a little confused since she knew Naruto's parents died the night he was born, now that she knew who his parents were. Granted, they could have arranged it before his birth, but that was unlikely. Ah, Jashin, right there Naruto-kun. A voice screamed out from the bedroom, causing both girls to blush. Even more surprising was that it was Hinata's voice. Silencing seals, Yugao called back, resulting in a string of curses from the trio in the room before they suddenly went silent. Jashin, Sakura questioned, looking to the purple-haired woman next to her. I guess the cat is out of the bag now, thanks to an orgasm. Yugao only chuckled. I suppose I should explain. All of us are Jashinist. I grew up as one, whereas Hinata and Anko converted a few years ago. However, do not lump us with those blood-crazed cultists that spout they are doing the will of Jashin-sama. Jashin-sama only desires the souls of those who are tainted and corrupt and abhors the slaughter of the innocent. And what about Naruto-kun? The Pinkett asked, keeping herself composed as she took in this sudden dump of information. He is Jashin-sama's chosen champion. She simply answered, all the while keeping an eye on the pink-haired girl. So that is what he meant when he told Inari-san that he was a champion. Sakura mused to herself, thinking back to the small confrontation between Naruto and Tsunami's son. Does this revelation change the way you feel about him? Yugao inquired. No, was Sakura's answer. It does not. I still love him. Perhaps tomorrow you should talk to him. The purple-haired woman suggested before pushing herself off her seat. I am going to head to bed, I have an early shift tomorrow. Good night, Yugao-san. The Pinkett bid the Anbu woman farewell. Now sitting alone, Sakura began to ponder what she had just learned. It seemed like in the past few weeks, everything she thought she knew was wrong. Sasuke was a selfish prick who only thought about himself, instead of her dream romance. Naruto was her dream romance, and not the idiotic knucklehead she thought him to be. The Kyuubi wasn't pure evil and had been used by another. And lastly, not all Jashinist were blood-crazed killers. Ironically, she believed both Naruto and Yugao. There was something in their eyes when they spoke about their respective topics that held truth and honesty. So tomorrow we are confessing to Naruto-kun, right? Inner inquired. Damn straight, I don't care if he is a full-on demon. Sakura mentally replied. I love him. The next morning, the house was silent as the sun peeked over the village, in contrast to the celebration that had taken place the previous night. Only 3 people remained as both Anko and Yugao had to leave early for their respective jobs. Of the 3 remaining in the home, only 2 were awake as Hinata was still passed out from all the alcohol she had consumed the previous night. Morning, Naruto-kun. Sakura greeted while she was cooking breakfast as the blonde entered the kitchen, getting a sense of déjà vu from the previous morning at his old apartment. Morning, Sakura-chan. Sorry about last night. He greeted her, a bit embarrassed about not having the silencing seals up last night. It's okay, Naruto-kun, she replied. I was just surprised everyone in the house was a Jashinist. Upon hearing this, Naruto had froze, wondering how she had come across such information until he realized what Hinata had called out during her moment of ecstasy. Yugao-san explained it to me after Thea. Well, you know. She explained, blushing slightly at the memory. She also suggested I should talk to you if I wanted to know more. I see, the blonde stated as he sat down at the table, while Sakura placed a plate of food in front of him. Is there anything in particular you wanted to know? I want to know about you, Naruto-kun. She replied as she sat next to him. I mean, all about you. Are you sure, Sakura-chan? He asked. It may change how you feel about me. Didn't we already address this back in Nami no Kuni? I guess we did. He chuckled. Very well, I will tell you everything about me, for better or worse. So, he began to tell the Pinkett his tale. Everything that had happened to him since his early childhood beatings at the hands of the villagers and even some of the shinobi. How the hospital would treat him after such attacks. The constant assassination attempts, each making the Pinkett feel more and more disgusted with the village she called home, though was surprised that the boy didn't seek any sort of revenge against them. Other than to simply prove them wrong. Worst of all, she knew her mother was responsible for most of these attacks. Then came the big revelation, when he began talking about what had transpired on his 6th birthday. The final attack that had nearly killed him, and forced a meeting between him and the Kyuubi. His confrontation with his father's soul fragment that was left in the seal, and how Jashin had come to him and made him her champion. And finally, how he was now a half-demon and how he became mated with Anko, then Yugao, Hinata, and finally Tsunami. Even explaining how the maid mark worked, as well as the benefits of being a Hanyu. Through it all, the Pinkett paid rapt attention to every detail. And that is everything there is to know about me, he finished, looking her in the eyes to gauge the girl's reaction. Sue, we're going to get marked, right? Inner asked. You're damn right we are. She mentally replied, before smiling to the blonde before her. Naruto-kun, all this still doesn't change the way I feel about you. If anything, I understand and respect you more for not giving into petty vengeance. Thank you, Sakura-chan, he smiled to the Pinkett. However, I have one more question. What's that? If you would allow it, I would love to be one of your mates. Sakura blushed as she got up from her seat and stood in front of him, her eyes never leaving his. Having finally openly confessed her feelings towards the blonde. Are you sure about this, Sakura-chan? He asked, wanting to make sure the Pinkett was completely committed to her choice. This is a lifetime bond, and as a Hanyu we will live for hundreds of years, if not more. A millennium still wouldn't be long enough to express the love I have grown for you, Naruto-kun. She smiled. And you do know you will have to share, right? He smiled, Now he was just playing with her. I know, and I know you will end up attracting more girls. It's just who you are. Sakura replied with a grin as she pressed against him, wrapping her arms around him, while he returned the gesture. But as long as I have a place in your heart, I don't care. Very well, Sakura-chan. Naruto smiled as he leaned in towards her neck. I will mark you as one of my mates. With no hesitation, the blonde Hanyu bit down onto her neck, prompting her to do the same. Mixing each other's chakra together. Almost immediately, the Pinkett could feel the difference. She could feel her own chakra reserves swell up, as well as her senses sharpening to an inhuman point. Physically, she could feel her muscles grow more dense, increasing her own stamina, speed, agility, and overall strength and durability. After the marking was complete, both released the other's necks and stared into each other's eyes before their lips clashed together into a deep kiss. Their tongues twisting along one another's as they firmly embraced each other.